Chapter 2133. Hell King added, We just want to catch the 8 mythical beasts that cause trouble. As for your son, we just want to invite him to the immortal realm to clarify some things. We don't have any intention to harm him. Bullshit. Full of nonsense. Who invites him like this? You guys keep saying that you want to catch the son of the demon god, okay? The people from the demon realm immediately scolded and exposed his lies. Ning Xuema listened for a moment and raised her hand. The demon stopped scolding. She waved the sky splitter sword in her hand and glanced at the 3 of them. She smiled gently. So you guys think so highly of my son. As his mother, shouldn't I feel happy? Come. To thank you guys, I will teach you a few moves. Don't worry, I will stop when I'm done. A red light flashed and pounced towards the Beast Emperor. The Beast Emperor turned pale with fright and was forced to fight. Ning Xuema swung her sword in a circle and pulled the Hell King, who wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. She then turned around and pulled the human emperor into the circle. In less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Ning Xuema finally finished practicing the dog-beating swordsmanship and stopped fighting with the 3 emperors. Ning Xuema was very trustworthy. She really stopped when she was done. She pierced them like porcupines. The 3 of them were covered with wounds. There was almost no place on their bodies that was not cut. They were all pierced by the sword. Their clothes were also pierced like a fishing net. The 3 of them were also in so much pain that they could not speak. The human emperor was the most cowardly. He was held by the guards beside him and could not even stand. Of course, in the fight just now, the 3 emperor's guards wanted to rush up and save their lord. However, Yi Tianli and the few hermits he summoned were watching them. As long as they made a slight move, they would be stopped by Yi Tianli and the others. They said that the king's competition was about face. Even if they lost, they had to lose in glory. They could not call for help or else they would be cowards. Yi Tianli and the others were rare experts in the world. How could they not stop them? Therefore, the guards could only watch helplessly as their lord was taught a lesson by the Devil Master. No, it was full of holes. These 4 people could be said to be powerful figures in the 6 realms. Now that they were beaten up in public, their prestige in the past was gone. They could not wait to find a hole to hide in. But now, there was no hole for them to hide in because Ning Xuema was not finished. After Ning Xuema finished dealing with the 4 leaders, she shocked everyone present. The people of the 4 realms felt a chill in their hearts. It was not that they did not think of ganging up on him, but with this devil lord here, they might not be his match even if they ganged up on him. What's more, behind the demon lord, there were 2,000 to 3,000 powerful demons, dozens of blood nether eagles, and Yi Tianli, who was unknown whether he was a friend or a foe. More importantly, their lord did not give them an order. Compared to the demons' joy, the generals of the 4 realms still felt incomparably indignant when they saw their lord being cultivated to such a state. Everyone felt that this demon master had gone too far. A warrior could be killed, but not humiliated. This demon lord had humiliated the 4 emperors. Their lord was humiliated like this. They felt like they were slapped in the face. They stood behind their lord with a gloomy face. Many people had the idea of fighting for their lives. It was not for anything else, but for justice. Especially those people from the immortal world. They were all sad and angry. They looked at Ning Xuema with eyes full of hatred. Chapter 2134. One of the immortals who hated evil stood out from the crowd. Devil Master, you're so mighty. You're so capable. You're so domineering just because you're born with an advantage. No matter how great the power in this world is, it can't be more powerful than reason. Devil Master, you bully people with your fists. Even if you defeat everyone, you might not be able to win people's hearts. His voice was impassioned. All the living beings in the 6 realms won't submit to you. Ning Xuema glanced at him and recognized that he was a famous immortal in the celestial world. His name was Niao Cheng, and he was known for his righteousness and his hatred of evil. Ning Xuema faintly smiled. She absent-mindedly waved the sword in her hand. You actually dare to speak to me like this? Aren't you afraid of death? The pressure from her body directly pressed towards that immortal. Those who were slightly weaker would have been forced to the ground by her. Niao Cheng held his head high and threw caution to the wind. I only respect those who deserve respect. Since I dared to say this, I've already disregarded life and death. Ning Xuema clapped her hands lightly and laughed instead of being angry. Good. You're a man of steel. I'll talk to you. Do you think it's reasonable for the celestial world to join forces with the other 3 realms to attack Mo Palace and capture a child who's not even half a year old? Is it righteous to bully a child? Niao Cheng was stunned. Your son is not an ordinary person. He's the reincarnation of an evil star. His power is already incomparable to that of ordinary people. He'll bring disaster to the 6 realms. Ning Xuema had been smiling, but at this moment, her pretty face suddenly darkened. Which mother would be angry when she heard someone else talk about her child like this? Before she could say anything, the demon general beside her was furious. Nonsense. Although our young master is smarter than ordinary people, that's because he's the son of a god and a demon. He's a genius. What reincarnation of an evil star? I think you're the reincarnation of a jinx. The jinx of your 6 family members. That's right. Not only is he the reincarnation of a jinx, but he's also the reincarnation of a god of plague. People in the devil world were generally hot-tempered and liked to do things directly. There were many boorish and hot-blooded men. Once they started scolding someone, they could really hurt someone's grandma. He scolded Niao Cheng until his face turned ashen. With his status, he naturally disdained to argue with others like this. He only sneered. Ning Xuema raised her hand to stop the demons from cursing. She glanced at Niao Cheng and said in a cold voice, Niao Cheng, you should have evidence before you speak. What are you trying to do by slandering a child? Where did you get the idea that he is the reincarnation of a malefic star? Niao Cheng said proudly, Of course, I'm not saying this for no reason. It's said by Lord Luo, who is going to be the master of the 6 realms. He got this maxim from the heavenly Tao stone. Because of this, His Majesty risked universal condemnation to capture a child in order to save the 6 realms. He's not just bullying the weak. He's doing this for the safety of the 6 realms. Ning Xuema narrowed her eyes. Venerable Luo? Heavenly Tao stone? That's right. His Majesty got this idea from Venerable Luo himself. It can't be false. Ning Xuema coldly smiled. So you heard it from the Heavenly Emperor's mouth. How can you be so sure that the Heavenly Emperor didn't use this as an excuse to trick you into going on an expedition to capture a child? Even if it's really Luo Jiuchen who said this, he must be lying. Only the real master of the world can communicate with the Heavenly Tao Stone. Luo Jiuchen has never ascended to that position. Chapter 2135. Niao Wuqian could not help but stare at the Celestial Emperor. The Celestial Emperor gritted his teeth and remained silent. Yi Tianli, who was next to him, suddenly spoke. Your Majesty and I decided on this statement after discussing it. It has nothing to do with Lord Luo. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Countless eyes looked at Yi Tianli. The Celestial Emperor did not care about the pain and said angrily, Nonsense. Yi Tianli, I have always treated you well. I did not expect that you would slander me today just to please the Devil Master. I clearly heard this from Venerable Luo, so how could I have discussed it with you? Yi Tianli glanced at him and slowly took out a blue magic conch from his arms. He clicked on a certain spot and a conversation was transmitted from the magic conch. Your Majesty, Shen Nianma is a child after all. He is also the son of the Celestial God and the Devil Master. I am afraid that you will be criticized by the 6 realms if you punish a child like this. The voice belonged to Yi Tianli. It doesn't matter. I will just fabricate a reason for him to be killed. What about the reincarnation of the Devil Master? Just say that he is the reincarnation of the Purple Devil Master. The world is very afraid of the Purple Devil Master. This accusation will certainly stop people from talking about it. This was the Celestial Emperor's voice. I don't understand. Your Majesty, it is fine to catch the 8 mythological beasts. Why do you have to catch the child? He is still so young. Humph. He is the son of the celestial god and the devil master. His mother died in prison. Who knows if he will seek revenge on the celestial kingdom when he grows up. Tianli, you have always been smart. Don't you understand the principle of cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots? The magic conk's voice was not soft. Everyone present could hear it. Everyone looked at the celestial emperor with a strange expression. The celestial emperor's face turned pale.
Fake. Fake.
You are clearly framing him. Your Majesty, this is the truth, conk. Once it leaves a message, no spell can change it. Yi Tianli said coldly. The celestial emperor was speechless. Niao Chang felt like he had been slapped in the face. His belief in the celestial emperor collapsed by half. His face turned red, and after a while, he said, Your Majesty was wrong to want to kill your son, but the Devil Lord was also wrong first. The 6 realms have their own laws. The Devil Lord poisoned the princess at the banquet and caused her to die an unnatural death. Naturally, he should be imprisoned and dealt with later. However, the 8 divine beasts broke into the prison and killed so many heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, committing a heinous crime. No matter what, our immortal realm is the army of justice. Head steward Heimu raised his head and laughed. Righteous. The dignified celestial world hunted down a child who was not even half a year old. How could they be called righteous? Are you trying to smear the name of justice? Nonsense. He is not an ordinary child. He is the son of the devil. It was he who ordered the 8 devil beasts to break into the prison and kill so many innocent immortal generals. He gave the order? What evidence do you have to prove that it was our young master who gave the order? If he didn't give the order, when the Devil Lord was locked up in the heavenly prison, who was the one who sent the 8 demonic beasts? Head steward Heimu's voice turned cold. It's me. You are ungrateful. You captured our Devil Lord, and you don't even allow us to save him? The immortal realm claims to be righteous, but what you are doing now is not righteous or benevolent at all. Our Devil Lord risked his life to seal Zisha a few days ago and saved the 6 realms from disaster. It's fine if you don't know how to be grateful, but you actually burned the bridge after crossing it. You captured him and locked him up in the prison without any explanation. Our young master is the son of the devil, but he is also the son of the supreme god. Chapter 2136. The supreme divinity immortalized in order to save the world and seal Zisha. Shouldn't his child be treated well by the 6 realms? But what did you do? You killed his mother. You even wanted to kill him. How can you call yourself righteous? You're clearly taking advantage of our Devil Lord's misfortune to take over the Devil Realm's territory, yet you insist on using the banner of righteousness. Do you think everyone in the 6 realms is blind? The celestial emperor's face was livid. He finally said, sophistry. After all, it was your Devil Lord who killed her first. I invited her to the banquet out of goodwill, but she poisoned the princess because of a quarrel. Even if she deserves credit for sealing Zisha, she can't be so lawless. Naturally, she has to give the celestial court an explanation. Haha, who do you think you can fool with that? Our Devil Lord only attended your banquet because she gave you face. Our Devil Lord has always been magnanimous and won't stoop to the level of petty people. Why would she take the princess's life because of a quarrel? Let's say that our Devil Lord was angered by your sister and wanted to kill her. She could have done it with a wave of her hand. Why did she have to poison him? It's obvious that someone with ulterior motives is framing her. Even a 3-year-old child can understand such a simple logic. Don't you understand, Celestial Emperor? Did your head get squeezed by a door? What's the reason for locking him up in the Imperial prison without a second word? If our Devil Lord really did such a thing, would she obediently wait for you to capture her? With her ability, it shouldn't be difficult for her to escape your capture, right? But she didn't. She dared to imprison you because she had a clear conscience. She thought that the celestial realm has always been known for being fair and strict and would give her an explanation and clear her name. But you killed her in the Imperial prison. Do you really think there's no one in the Devil Realm? Our Devil Lord was wronged, So, of course, we had to save her. You killed her. The 8 divine beasts have already given you enough face by not massacring the celestial realm. General Manager Himu was also eloquent. He choked the Celestial Emperor with a few words. The Celestial Emperor said angrily, "There were witnesses and material evidence at that time. It's useless to quibble. Also, your Devil Lord was clearly here."
How was she killed?
Ning Xuema, who had been watching the fight from the sidelines, finally spoke slowly. "I did die in the prison. As for returning here now, it's because I escaped death and was reborn." Everyone. Ning Xuema had appeared with the golden red light. This was something that everyone had seen. Indeed, it looked very much like a rebirth. Ning Xuema flicked her finger and smiled leisurely. "As for what you said about me killing your sister, do you think someone like her is worth my time?" That's right. The Celestial Emperor and his sister have always been on bad terms. They don't interact with each other at all. That sister often speaks ill of the Celestial Emperor behind his back. I heard that the siblings often quarrel because of this. Who knows if the Celestial Emperor didn't do it this time? He poisoned his own sister and put the blame on our Devil Master. This is a plan that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Yes, that must be it. I heard that there are still many righteous people in the immortal world. Now that they are being used by a despicable person, I'm afraid they don't feel good about it. The Lord of the immortal world should also be a selfless role model. But now, she's saying one thing and doing another. It really makes people look down on her. I wonder if the others in the immortal world would feel angry to have such a lord? The demons immediately became noisy again. Chapter 2137. The Celestial Emperor was so angry that his face turned as red as a pig's liver. Ning Xuema clapped her hands to silence the crowd. Then she slowly said, "You have misunderstood the Celestial Emperor. He did not do it. There's someone else behind this." She turned to ask little Nianma, "Nianma, do you still have my things?" She was reborn, not repossessed. Therefore, she did not have the things in the storage space of the original body. Shen Nianma nodded. "I have kept all of Mother's things." A moment later, Ning Xuema also got a magic conch. It was the same kind as the one that Yi Tianli had. The recording was the conversation between her and Luo Jiuqin in the prison. Everything. The truth was revealed. The people from the 4 worlds looked at each other. Not only was the Celestial Emperor's face as red as an eggplant, but even the soldiers around him felt that their faces were burning. Most of these people did not know the inside story. When the Celestial Emperor sent the troops, the reason he gave was very reasonable. Therefore, everyone thought that they were indeed the righteous ones. Now, they felt like they had been slapped in the face. They felt that they were not strong enough to stand there. The Celestial Emperor's face turned green, but he did not say anything. Not many of his former subordinates stayed by his side. They all kept a distance from him. As for the other 3 kings, they all looked as if they suddenly realized that they had been used this time. They bowed and apologized to Ning Xuema. At this time, it was not shameful for them to find a way out. Ning Xuema smiled and ignored them. She looked at General Manager Heimu and asked, "How many people did the Devil Kingdom lose this time?" General Manager Heimu was a capable man. He had already calculated the number of people and reported to Ning Xuema truthfully, "Devil Master, this time, including the Blood Nether Eagles, the MO Palace lost a total of 1,688 people. It was a tragic number." Ning Xuema nodded slightly. She glanced at the Blood Nether Eagles and said, "They don't have to be included. I can restore them." The remaining Blood Nether Eagles' eyes suddenly lit up. Even General Manager Himu widened his eyes and stared at his Devil Master in disbelief. Ning Xuema flicked her sleeves and said, "Other than those who can be saved, our MO Palace has lost a total of 1,500 people. These people can't be sacrificed in vain. I still have to get back at them." The expressions of the people from the celestial world changed. Someone couldn't help but say, "We lost more people than you, nearly 10,000. You are invaders. No matter how many of you die, your deaths will be in vain." Ning Xuema said straightforwardly, "The immortals." That was indeed the case. Since they had invaded and defeated the other party, they naturally had no right to negotiate with the other party. They could only allow the other party to name their price. Could it be that the Devil Lord wants to kill another 1,500 of us? Someone asked cautiously. The corners of Ning Xuema's lips curled up. Since this is a war, military orders must be obeyed. The ordinary soldiers are just following orders. It has nothing to do with them. I will not punish ordinary soldiers. As soon as she said this, all the soldiers heaved a sigh of relief. However, the 4 generals' hearts were all on edge. Could it be that the Devil Lord wants to kill all 1,500 of them? The problem was that even if they counted all the generals, it still wouldn't be enough. Ning Xuema's gaze was like ice as it swept past the generals of the 4 realms. You have a total of 420 people. Since you were all deceived by others and obeyed orders, I won't kill you all. You can break one of your arms and barely make up for it. Chapter 2138. Although Ning Xuema's conditions were cruel, they were reasonable and fair. Rewards and punishments were clear. No one was dissatisfied, and no one dared to be dissatisfied. After all, they were still alive, right? These people were all generals, and they were not afraid of pain or death. Therefore, after half an hour, the army of the 4 worlds retreated, leaving only a pile of bloody arms. Before they left, Ning Xuema left behind a few words for them. A few words that made their balls hurt and made them not dare to rebel again. In order to prevent everyone from going back on their words and causing trouble for the Mo Palace, I have spread a bone-corroding poison in the air. It will enter upon contact with blood. If you don't have my special antidote, you will die within 10 days. Everyone was speechless. Broken walls, broken bones, and flesh were everywhere. The Mo Palace that used to be filled with flowers and brocade now looked like hell. Ning Xuema carried little Nianma to the training ground of the Mo Palace. She looked at the collapsed palace and the ground that was full of ravines. She was lost in thought. General Manager Heimu was worried that she would be sad. Devil Master, don't worry. As long as the people are still alive, the Mo Palace can be rebuilt. Ning Xuema nodded slightly. The palace could be rebuilt, but what about the people? Could they come back? Not far away, the Crimson Nether Eagles stood in a row on a broken shelf. They were originally devils, but in order to protect their young master, they used a forbidden spell to turn into the Crimson Nether Eagles. They only had 3 days to live. Now that they were back, they actually wanted to go back to the house where they used to live. However, they could not go back in this form. They stood there in a daze. They still had consciousness. Pairs of eyes looked at Ning Xuema, but there was a desire to live. Ning Xuema inwardly sucked in a breath of air before instructing head steward Heimu to prepare all kinds of magic tools she needed. She wanted to transform these Nether Eagles back. General Manager Heimu agreed and immediately went to prepare. After the chaos, there were many things waiting to be done. All the devils in Mo Palace were busy healing their wounds and rebuilding. Most of them had mixed feelings. They should be happy that they survived the disaster, but many of their relatives and friends died in this disaster. They could not be happy. But fortunately, the Devil Master had returned. They once again had a pillar of support, and there was hope again. The only thing that made them nervous was the fake god. That person was a very powerful existence. He had always been at odds with the Devil Master. He always schemed against them, which made them worried. However, in this incident, that person did not appear. This made the devils feel relieved, but they were also a little worried. However, the devils had always been generous. This time, they were able to return safely.
It was equivalent to keeping their lives.
If there was a disaster in the future, a scar as big as a bowl would be left on his head, but he was not afraid. Tianli, thank you for this time. Ning Xuema thanked Yi Tianli, who was walking beside her. A large part of her previous plan was planned together with Yi Tianli. Yi Tianli had secretly sent her the shell of truth after she was sent to prison. He had helped her when she was at her most dangerous time. The secret tunnel that led to the outside world was also created by Yi Tianli. This made it easier for the 8 mythological beasts to enter the prison to save her. Yi Tianli had been secretly helping her. For her, he went to the Sky Emperor's side as a spy and successfully gained the Sky Emperor's trust. This made the Sky Emperor put him in an important position and told him all kinds of secrets. This allowed him to find the Sky Emperor's weakness and expose his conspiracy. Chapter 2139. More than a dozen of his hermit friends were helping the Celestial Emperor in the process of besieging the Mo Palace, but in fact, they had secretly helped little Nianma to escape several times. If Ning Xuema did not appear in time, Yi Tianli would have been ready to pull out his sword when little Nianma was really in danger. He wanted to plot against the Celestial Emperor. Even if he could not kill him, he could at least injure him and create a chance for little Nianma to escape. Of course, if that happened, he would be completely exposed. There was only one word waiting for him: death. Fortunately, Ning Xuema appeared at the critical moment. He also successfully exposed the conspiracy of the Celestial Emperor and Luo Jiuchen with her and helped Ning Xuema to clear her name. However, his identity as a spy was also exposed, and he could no longer return to the Celestial Kingdom. Brother Yi, I am sorry. Ning Xuema could not help but sigh. You can't go back to the Celestial Kingdom because of me? Yi Tianli smiled gently, as usual. Xuema, you don't have to be polite with me. I have always treated you as a friend. Besides, I don't like what the Celestial Emperor did. As for Lord Luo, he does not have the magnanimity of a master of heaven and earth. It is better not to protect him. I only want to be worthy of my friends and my conscience. I don't care about anything else. Ning Xuema smiled. Even she did not expect to become a real friend with Yi Tianli. She glanced at his wrist. Your hand, how is it? Yi Tianli moved his wrist. It is fine now, and there is not much difference from before. Don't worry. By the way, Xuema, why did you cut off the arms of those generals? Are you really avenging the Devil Assembly? You have to know that they were actually following orders. Yi Tianli was a little confused about this. Ning Xuema did not hide it from him. Revenge is only one thing. The more important thing is to weaken their combat power. I don't know why Luo Jiuchen has not shown up. This person has always been a hidden danger. I don't know what he is planning behind the scenes. We have to be careful of him instigating the Four Worlds to attack the Mo Palace again. Those generals were the mainstay during the war. Now that they are injured and poisoned, they are powerless to attack the Mo Palace again. They will definitely hold back. Yi Tianli could not help but laugh. Maybe there will be people who are afraid of death. In order to get your antidote, they will come to the Four Realms as soon as there is a disturbance, right? Ning Xuema touched her nose. You saw through me. There were more than 400 generals, and there were bound to be some who were afraid of death. For the sake of the antidote, they would do anything. She had already asked head steward He Mu to make arrangements to pay attention to the movements of these generals and seize the opportunity to instigate a rebellion. As for the Celestial Emperor and the other 4 emperors, each of them had been severely injured by her Sky Splitter sword. They also needed the special antidote that she had concocted. For the sake of the antidote, they naturally wouldn't act rashly, which was equivalent to being controlled by her. Her method was actually imitating the Tianshan Tong Lao in demigods and semi-devils. She planted the life and death talisman on the leaders of the sects that she needed to control. Only her antidote could keep them alive. Therefore, although the leaders of the sects were secretly dissatisfied with the Tianshan Tong Lao, they still obediently allowed her to control them. Ning Xuema originally did not want to use this method, but desperate times called for desperate measures. This way, she could turn passive into active. Yi Tianli was also very smart. After thinking for a while, he understood Ning Xuema's intention. He sighed. The poison in those people, is it powerful? Chapter 2140. Ning Xuema smiled. If they do not use their psychokinesis within 2 years, they will not be powerful. If they come to harm the Mo Palace again, don't blame me for being merciless. The poison that she used on those people was similar to the life and death spell. If they dared to attack again, she only needed to use a special spell to make the poison spread quickly in their bodies and explode. Yi Tianli looked at her with a complicated gaze. She was not a kind girl and would not repay evil with good. She was a person who would seek revenge. If you were kind to her, she would risk her life for you. If you were not kind to her, she would chase you for 3,000 miles. She might not be the most beautiful woman in the 6 realms, but she was the most dazzling one. Unfortunately, her heart already belonged to someone else. However, it was not bad to be her friend. Yi Tianli looked at her with a smile. Do you need me to do anything else? Ning Xuema was not polite with him. If possible, help me treat the injured Mo Palace. I remember that your medical skills are good. Yi Tianli nodded. Okay, I have a few friends who are good at medicine. I will ask them to help. He turned and strode away. Ning Xuema breathed a sigh of relief. What was there to regret if she had such friends? She had been busy just now and could only take a breather now. Little Myanmar had been in her arms for half a month and did not want to come down. The child had not slept for half a month. His eyes were red like a rabbit's. Now that he was in his mother's arms again, he was very relieved. He fell asleep on Ning Xuema's way back. He did not feel safe even when he was asleep. His 2 little hands were holding her collar, and he could not pull it away. Ning Xuema finally returned to the small courtyard of the side palace. On the way back, before little Myanmar fell asleep, he timidly told her that Xiaohe had also withered on the 3rd day after she fell asleep. He had tried many ways to save it, but he could not. In the end, he gave the withered Xiaohe to her as a funeral gift and burned it. That sentence almost sent Ning Xuema to hell. It made her stumble while flying and almost fell off the cloud. But at that time, the entire Mo Palace was looking at her, waiting for her to give them strength, and her son. Her son's eyes were also looking at her. This child was probably frightened by her death this time. Seeing that her expression was slightly not right, he immediately grabbed her clothes and said, "Mother." Ning Xuema took a deep breath to calm herself down. She smiled at her son and said, "It's okay. I am fine.
Come, Myanmar. Take a nap.
Your eyes are as red as a rabbit's." Finally, Gu Shiju managed to make Myanmar fall asleep. Now that she had finally returned to this small courtyard, she was still unwilling to give up. She wanted to search the flower bed again. She put Myanmar on the bed in the house and walked out by herself. She squatted in the flower bed, hoping to find some clues, even if it was just a root. An hour later, she was finally disappointed. She searched every inch of the flower bed, but found nothing. The Xiaohe, who had once brought her hope, was gone. She squatted there, feeling cold all over. Even her fingers were a little cold.
Gone.
How could it disappear? She had clearly changed the spell, hadn't she? She had clearly changed her fate. Why did her only hope disappear when she came back? After she jumped into the black hole, did Shinjuli have an accident? She recalled the last time she saw Shinjuli. His eyes were almost crazy, and his actions were crazy. Chapter 2141. She recalled the last time she saw Shinjuli. Shinjuli's eyes were filled with madness, and his actions were crazy. Her heart seemed to be squeezed by something. It was so painful that she couldn't breathe. She slowly sat in the flower bed. Until now, she was able to organize her thoughts. When she was trapped in the Fantion Palace in that era, the Heavenly Stone made a deal with her to encourage her. It said that as long as she sealed Zisha, the Heavenly Stone would help her, and her martial strength would be improved instantly. At that time, she was worried about Shinjuli. How could she not risk her life to get this promise? So, she tried her best to break the enchantment of the Fantion Palace and finally broke out. And in the array that sealed Zisha, she got the last revelation from the Heavenly Stone. That revelation was a bit deceptive, but it coincided surprisingly with history. The seal of Zisha required either her or Shinjuli to sacrifice themselves in order for it to succeed. If she didn't die, then the one who would die would be Shinjuli. Ning Xuema had no choice. Of course, she chose to sacrifice herself. So, to reward her, the Heavenly Stone allowed her to make a wish. This wish would be fulfilled through a spell after she jumped down as a sacrifice, But the heavenly stone was very strict. It only gave her half a minute to think. It also said that her wish could only be 8 words, and she could only make one wish. This request was too sudden. Ning Xuema couldn't think of anything else in her nervousness. Finally, within half a minute, she hurriedly asked the heavenly stone for a wish that Xinjuli would never immortalize. If he didn't immortalize, it meant that he would never die, even after 50,000 years. Because she knew that she was going to be a sacrifice, Ning Xuema naturally wanted to alienate Xinjuli. She even wanted to draw a line between them and deliberately hurt his heart. She wanted him to be desperate for her. She wanted him to hate her. It was so that when she jumped into the black hole, Xinjuli wouldn't be too sad and do anything extreme. And she also said that when they met in the Tianxi continent 50,000 years later, she could give him a little hope and let him survive. Ning Xuema knew how hard it was to wait. If possible, she would rather he forget about her in these tens of thousands of years. That way, he wouldn't have to suffer so much. She had Shui Emo's memories, so she knew that the great god didn't recognize her when they met on the Tianxi continent. He had even made things difficult for her several times. It was obvious that Xinjili didn't have any memories of Mo Demon Master's past life. However, he had already changed history and replaced little Xuema. Even if the Almighty went to the Tianxi continent in the future, would he still lose his memory? She was very worried about this before jumping into the black hole. In the black hole, she was bitten by the purple demon beasts. When she lost consciousness, she was worried that she would not be able to travel back and would die here forever. Not bad. It was probably because she had saved the mythical continent that she had finally transmigrated back. Furthermore, it was not a soul transmigration, but a direct rebirth in this world. The moment she opened her eyes, she found that she had finally returned to her original world. She appeared in the sky with a myriad of rays of light. She sat there and reorganized her thoughts, recalling the past. She found that the scenes of Shui Emo and Ning Xuema's life and death love with the great god were still fresh in her mind. This meant that there were no major changes in history. Everything was going according to the original plan. Even the scene of Xinjuli immortalizing a few months ago was still vivid in her mind. Damn it, was she tricked by the heavenly Dao stone? Chapter 2142. Damn it, had she been tricked by the heavenly law stone? Did the heavenly law stone not help her fulfill her wish? Had Xinjuli completely immortalized? Was the heavenly law stone so unreliable? Xinjuli, I am here. Where are you? Are you blaming me for hurting you 50,000 years ago and refusing to come back? She sat there, her heart burning as she stared at the nursery in a daze. She wished she could stare a flower out of the nursery. Should she go to the Fantion Palace to look for the heavenly law stone? She wanted to ask it what was going on. Once the idea came to her mind, she did not want to wait any longer. Just when she was about to get up, she suddenly heard her son crying in the room. Mother? Wah, mother. The cry was like a little lamb being bitten by a wolf. It was as miserable as it could be, and as nervous as it could be. Ning Xuema almost did not hesitate. Her body flashed and appeared in front of the bed in the hall. She pulled open the bed curtain and took a look. Her heart seemed to have been twisted by someone. Little Nianma had already shakily stood up from the bed, but his eyes were still closed. His 2 little hands were scratching the bed, and he kept crying for his mother. Obviously, he was sleepwalking. In his dream, he was extremely insecure, so he also wanted to look for his mother in the dream. Ning Xuema's heart ached. She raised her hand and hugged him in her arms. Nianma, mother is here. Little Nianma's 2 little hands immediately grabbed her sleeves tightly. His whole body desperately snuggled into her arms. Mother, don't die. Ning Xuema's heart ached. She hugged him tightly. Well, mother will not leave you again. Good boy, sleep for a while more. She simply went to the bed and hugged the child in her arms. She closed her eyes slightly. Little Nianma finally calmed down in her arms. He was really tired and fell asleep in a daze. Ning Xuema wanted to get up again, but when she saw the child holding on to her clothes tightly, she softened her heart. She decided to accompany her son to have a good rest. In a daze, she also fell asleep. When she woke up, Ning Xuema felt something warm rubbing against her nose. She opened her eyes and met her son's large, dark eyes with a hint of blue. He sat beside her and placed a small hand on her lips and the tip of her nose. It was obvious that he was subconsciously checking her breathing, probably afraid that she wasn't breathing again. Her big eyes were wide open, and she looked a little nervous. When Gu Shizhou opened her eyes, little Nianma was relieved. He went back into her arms and hugged her. "Mother." He sounded like he was asking for a hug. Ning Xuemo rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She reckoned that her son must have been scared out of his wits when she died that time. Normally, when a child of his age was still breastfeeding, he had already experienced so many hardships. The little fellow was not even half a year old yet. His body was the size of a 2 to 3-year-old child. Originally, he was chubby in her arms, but now, she could feel his tiny skeleton. He was too skinny. He was so thin that it made her hair stand on end. If Shunjuli came back and saw that her son was so thin, he would probably blame her. She felt like there was a pair of pliers twisting her heart. She hugged her son even tighter. She did not get up. She just lay there and talked to her son for a while. Shin Yanma had been silent for so many days. Today, he finally opened his mouth and talked to his mother about some of the things that happened during these days. His voice was still a little hoarse. The next time they encountered the same situation, he would not wait for Ning Xuema to open her mouth and would have already prepared everything she needed for her. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Ning Xuema had a bad habit of placing things everywhere, and little Nianma was obviously similar to his father in this aspect. He liked to place everything neatly, as if he was a soldier. Little Robe was always clean. The first spell he learned was the cleansing incantation. Restoring the blood Netherhawk's original body was extremely complicated. Not only did it require mental power, but it also required a certain amount of surgery. Furthermore, it required surgery on both the soul and the body. A blood nether eagle was formed by the fusion of the bodies and souls of 2 demons. They had to be completely separated. This was a very sophisticated work, and it took nearly an hour to separate one. There were more than 80 blood nether eagles. Although Ning Xuema had used a spell on them in advance, it was still quite troublesome to do it. Chapter 2144. However, there were more than 80 crimson nether eagles. Although Ning Xuema had cast a spell on them in advance to extend their lifespan by 1 day, it could only be extended by 1 day. If they were not treated in time, they would only have 3 days to live. She worked nonstop for 3 days, but she could only make 72 crimson nether eagles. Therefore, time was tight. Once Ning Xuema started, there was no time for rest. She worked on one after another. Initially, she thought that she would not be able to finish the task even if she risked her life. However, after Nianma helped her from a young age, they became more and more familiar with each other. Their speed was getting faster and faster. In the end, their speed increased by 1/3. They could separate 1 crimson nether eagle every 15 minutes. After working together for a day and a half, they had already completed 60 crimson nether eagles. There were only 20 left. Ning Xuema calculated that she could finish the task by herself, so she asked her son to rest quickly. Unexpectedly, little Nianma refused. He liked to work with his mother, and he also liked to do this. According to his own words, he could learn a lot from it. 3 days.
It was a race against time.
Finally, on the night of the 3rd day, all the crimson nether eagles were successfully separated. These more than 100 crimson nether eagles were saved. When the last crimson nether eagle was successfully separated, the entire Mo Palace burst into deafening cheers. Long live the Devil Master! Long live the Devil Master! All hail the Devil Master! We are willing to go through water and tread on fire for the Devil Master. All kinds of cheers were endless. Everyone was excited. This excitement was not only because of the return of more than 100 crimson nether eagles, but also because of the Devil Master's actions. These more than 100 Crimson Nether Eagles were not very high-level Crimson Nether Eagles in the MO Palace. Logically speaking, such Crimson Nether Eagles were sacrificed. The Devil Kings of the past would not sacrifice their psychokinesis for such Crimson Nether Eagles, let alone save them like Ning Xuema did. It was unprecedented for a Devil Master to be so kind to her subordinates. Only such a Devil Master was worthy of their sacrifice. They were willing to sacrifice everything for her. What's more, this Devil Lord's medical skills were so high that he could actually cure an almost incurable disease. Having such a Devil Lord was simply a blessing that the Devil Realm had never had before. What was even rarer was that the young lord was actually able to follow his mother's instructions. One had to know that even head steward Himu, a godly doctor from the Devil Realm, couldn't do anything at that time. The Demon Realm finally had a successor. The young master was also so powerful. When the lower-level Devil Clansmen had sacrificed themselves to protect their young master's escape, they were still somewhat unwilling. But now, all those unwillingness had vanished like smoke in thin air. With the Devil Lord and the young master, why would the Devil Realm not prosper in the future? The devils, who had been depressed over the deaths of their friends and family, were now completely relaxed. Demons had always been open-minded when it came to problems, so they quickly pulled themselves together and began to rebuild MO Palace with great confidence. And from now on, Ning Xuema's name as the Devil Master would be even more resounding. Outside, some loose devils who were originally not under his control also came one after another to seek refuge. MO Palace became even more prosperous. Of course, this was a story for later. Ning Xuema had also learned a lesson from the encirclement of the 4 realms this time. Her MO Palace was indeed magnificent, but its defenses weren't very strong. This time, if the 8 great divine beasts hadn't used the divine barrier to hold on for 16 days, everyone in MO Palace would probably have been exterminated by the 4 realms. Chapter 2145. Therefore, during the reconstruction of MO Palace this time, Ning Xuema added some mechanism techniques and taught them to head steward Himu. She asked him to bring people to repair the palace according to the layout. Once the modifications were successful, it would automatically form a kind of formation that only the people in MO Palace could enter and leave freely. This way, if MO Palace was attacked by other realms when she was not at home, this formation would be able to resist for a few days. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Everything in MO Palace was on track, and the reconstruction was mostly successful. These days, Ning Xuema's news was not blocked. From time to time, spies from other realms would report all kinds of news. For example, the Celestial Emperor's prestige was greatly damaged after this battle. After he returned to the celestial world with serious injuries, not many deities from other realms went to visit him. Less than 1/3 of the original number went to visit him. The other deities either said that they were sick and could not come out. In short, the Celestial Emperor's situation was a bit miserable. His injuries were the most serious. It was said that he had invited many divine doctors, but none of them could do anything. They could only watch him suffer, as if he was being tortured every day. People who were in pain for a long time naturally had a bad temper. Therefore, the Celestial Emperor often flew into a rage at the people around him. He even pulled out his sword and killed an inner servant just because the inner servant walked a little too loudly. Because of this, the Celestial Emperor naturally became even more unpopular. It was said that not only did some ministers run away, but even the maids and inner servants in the palace were gradually running away. Even the Celestial Emperor's 2 heavenly concubines did not dare to appear in front of him because of his bad temper. The Celestial Emperor could be said to be deserted by everyone. It was only a matter of time before he was overthrown. This was the reason why Ning Xuema did not kill him. Didn't he use all kinds of methods to fight for territory? Wasn't he not even willing to let the children go? She wanted him to watch helplessly as his regime was overthrown. But he was powerless. This was her greatest revenge against the Celestial Emperor. As for the Celestial Emperor's injuries, without her antidote, he would never recover. He would toss and turn in pain all day and night. Therefore, Ning Xuema could almost predict what would happen to the Celestial Emperor in the end. As for the emperors of the other realms, they also suffered a lot of injuries. They would also be in pain all day and night without relief. This was a bloody lesson she wanted to teach them. In the future, he would decide whether to give them the antidote based on their performance. Of course, in order to let them remember this lesson, she waited for them to be in pain for a full 4 days before ordering someone to send them half of the antidote. This antidote could stop the pain, but it would not cure them completely. They had to receive the antidote once every month, or else the pain would relapse, and it would only get worse after the relapse. As for the injured generals, Ning Xuema would deliver the antidote to them 4 days later. Of course, the antidote had to be taken once a month. Once it was cut off, the relapse would be even more severe. It could be said that the leaders of the invasion of the 4 realms were all under control, and they didn't dare to cause any more trouble. Ning Xuema's move could be said to be a thunderous method, but it was also the best method at the moment. What worried her the most was Luo Jiuchen. That guy never showed up and no one even knew where he went. It was as if he had disappeared forever. However, Ning Xuema knew that he would not disappear. She just didn't know what he was planning behind her back. Since she couldn't find him for a while, she might as well not look for him. After all, she had not made the heaven's water poison yet. Now, even if that bastard came out and asked her to chop him, she couldn't do anything to him. Chapter 2146. She only asked General Manager Heimu to strengthen the security so that even if Luo Jiuchen came, he would not be able to take advantage of the situation. After she successfully rescued the Crimson Nether Eagles, she only rested for half a day to recover her energy. Then, she immediately went to Fantion Palace. Of course, before she left, she asked her son to wait in Fantion Palace obediently. At the same time, she also asked the 8 mythological beasts to stay close to him. After this big change, little Nianma had matured a lot. Although he was reluctant to leave his mother, he did not pester her. He went to practice. The bamboo forest was thin, and the clouds were leisurely. Ning Xuema stood outside Fantion Palace and looked at the gate. She was lost in thought. 50,000 years had passed, but Fantion Palace was still the same. Even the green jade nails on the gate were not missing. In fact, in order to break out of Fantion Palace 50,000 years ago, she forcibly broke the wizardry barrier at the gate of Fantion Palace. As a result, there was a round hole on the gate. Now, the round hole was still there, like an eye looking at Ning Xuema. A round hole. How did this hole exist? She remembered that when she was forced to leave Fantion Palace with Nianma, there was no such hole in the gate. How did it suddenly appear now? She looked at the shape and size of the hole. It was exactly the same as when she broke it.
She even saw her small handprint on it. She put her hand on it.
It was neither big nor small. It was hers. Her heart skipped a beat. She remembered that when she traveled to the past, the speed of time seemed to be synchronized. The number of days she spent in the past was the same as the number of days here. Did she also leave a trace when she broke the barrier of Fantion Palace? Then, she and Shunjili had set up so many traps in Fantion Palace. Would it also happen automatically? If that was the case, the waterside pavilion where Luo Jiuchen lived was set up by her and Shunjili. Would it inadvertently trap Luo Jiuchen, who was resting inside? Later on, Shunjili took her to set up a circle of arrays around the waterside pavilion. Each array was so powerful that even ghosts and gods would cry. Luo Jiuchen had not appeared. Did that mean that he was not missing? Was he trapped in there and could not get out? She had heard from Yi Tianli that the Sky Emperor had been trying to contact Luo Jiuchen for the past half a month, but he could not reach him. The first time the voice transmission talisman was connected, but because the voice was too noisy, she could not hear what the other party was saying. After that, the voice transmission talisman did not go through again. She remembered that Shunjili had once said that the array he had set up could not only trap people, but it could also make the voice-transmitting talisman lose its effect. From Ning Xuema's point of view, It was Shunjuli's formation that blocked the signal. If Luo Jiuchen was really trapped inside, he wouldn't be able to communicate with the outside world. Now that he thought about it, it was a perfect match. She listened carefully. The Fanteon Palace was as quiet as a huge tomb. There was no sound at all. Strange, if Luo Jiuchen was breaking the array inside, there should be no sound at all, right? Could it be that Luo Jiuchen had already broken out of the array? Or was he trapped to death in the array? She thought about it, then cast a spell to open the gate of Fanteon Palace. She walked in, she entered very carefully. It could be said that there was no sound at all. The scenery in front of her was still the same. It was no different from when she left 50,000 years ago. But at this time, she did not have time to be sad. She had to verify the speculation in her heart. If Luo Jiuchen was trapped here, he was bound to be very weak. It was a good opportunity to beat him when he was down. She might even be able to lock this bastard into the bell of Heaven Dao again. Chapter 2147. Shunjuli had taught her how to open and seal the Tian Dao bell. She didn't have the sky water poison. Even if she couldn't kill him, it would be good if she could lock him up for tens of thousands of years. If she didn't get rid of this person, he would always be a time bomb in her life. Who knew when he would blow up her beautiful life? She flew all the way and arrived at the periphery of the waterside pavilion in the blink of an eye. Then, she narrowed her eyes and unsheathed the sky regicide. The periphery of the waterside pavilion seemed to have been blown by a hurricane. There were broken walls and broken branches everywhere. In other words, the outermost array had been broken. Ning Xuema quickly circled around the periphery. From time to time, she grabbed the fallen leaves on the ground to look and smell them. She was indeed a special agent. Even the most powerful criminal police couldn't compare with her observation and tracking ability. After circling around in such a small circle, she came to two conclusions based on the current situation. The array here had indeed trapped Luo Jiuchen, and he had already escaped 3 days ago. Had he escaped from Fanteon Palace? Or was he hiding in a corner of Fanteon Palace, waiting to give her a fatal blow? Ning Xuema never dared to underestimate this person. This person was as cunning as a fox and as ruthless as a wolf. As long as it was related to him, she had to be careful. She had to be careful. Half an hour later, Ning Xuema had changed all the mechanisms. Her heart sank. All the mechanisms set up by her and Shunjuli had been broken. According to the traces at the scene, she could tell when he had broken each mechanism. The earliest mechanism was broken 10 days ago, and the latest one was broken 3 days ago. In other words, when Luo Jiuchen broke out of the array, she had just pacified the invasion of the 4 realms and controlled them. If Luo Jiuchen had gone out at that time, he couldn't have urged the 4 realms to make trouble. He had been trapped in this array for half a month. Breaking the array must have consumed a lot of his strength, and he might have been seriously injured. With that person scheming, he would not expose himself in front of the people of the 4 realms. So, where would he go? Luo Jiuchen was proficient in the art of transformation. If he wanted to hide, ordinary spies wouldn't be able to find him at all. Logically speaking, this Fanteon Palace was the best place for him to rest and recuperate. Perhaps after he left, he would return to Fanteon Palace and cultivate in a place with abundant spirit qi to recover. Ning Xuema was also a bold person. She didn't want to miss this opportunity, so she immediately began to search inside and outside Fanteon Palace. Luo Jiuchen hadn't inherited the position of the Master of Heaven and Earth yet, so there were many places in the Fanteon Palace that he couldn't go to. Therefore, Ning Xuema found those places where he could go. Strangely enough, she had almost dug 3 feet into the ground to search, not even letting go of an ant's nest, but she still couldn't find any trace of Luo Jiuchen. It seemed like that person had really escaped. He had suffered such a big loss in Fanteon Palace, so he might have a psychological shadow of this place. That was why he ran away as soon as he was free. Then, where was he most likely to go in the 6 realms? This was a difficult question to answer. Ning Xuema pondered for a moment and decided to look for the heavenly Dao stone first. On the lone peak, the wind was biting cold. The heavenly Dao stone was still there, but it was still dim and dull, no different from an ordinary stone. Ning Xuema thought of its awesome appearance 50,000 years ago and looked at it now. She almost suspected that the one in front of her was an imposter. Chapter 2148. Heavenly Dao, how have you been? Ning Xuema did not give up and began to try to talk to it. She said a lot of things to it. She praised it, provoked it, and even scolded it. In the end, she even kicked it. But it did not react at all. It stood there quietly, indicating that it was just an ordinary stone. Ning Xuema used all her methods, but it did not even flash, as if it had run out of electricity. What should she do if it played dead at this time? Her heart was full of hope that he could come back within half a year. But now, could it be that she had made so many sacrifices in the past and still could not change her fate? She was bitten by the purple fiend beast for nothing? This bastard stone. He actually used this to trick her. Ning Xuema was angry, and desperate. She kicked the stone several times. This bastard heavenly Dao. She could not see any hope of Shen Juli coming back. After venting her anger, she sat there powerlessly. If it weren't for the fact that she was still worried about her son, she would have wanted to stay here forever. Suddenly, she seemed to think of something and suddenly jumped up. Luo Jiuchen had already escaped. If he ran to Mo Palace and did something to her son, thinking of this possibility, she immediately turned and left. She disappeared like a gust of wind. The peak returned to its usual calm, as if no one had ever come. Suddenly, the dull white stone glowed slightly under the sunlight. The light was very faint, so faint that it could be ignored if one did not look carefully. At this time, if someone had a pair of X-ray eyes, they would be able to see that the inside of the stone was not as dim as the outside. The inside was actually sparkling and transparent like crystal. Moreover, the space was not small. It was like a shining crystal hall. The crystal pillars in the hall had countless runes flashing on them. And in the center of the hall, there was a lotus. A gigantic crystal lotus. The layers of petals stretched out like a lotus seat, and in the center of the lotus sat a boy wearing a tutu. The boy seemed to be meditating. He looked less than a year old and was extremely beautiful. She had a fair face, fair arms and legs, and even her hair was snow white. Her long eyelashes covered her eyes and face, making her look like a porcelain doll. The lotus petals around the boy also seemed to have runes circulating around them. From time to time, they would flash with a faint light, as if they were providing nourishment for him to recover. On the crystal pillar next to the boy, lines of words slowly flashed, as if explaining something. I didn't break my promise. I didn't play dead. I will fight for this promise with all my strength. He paused for a moment, then continued, Do you think you're growing cabbages by reviving those who had already immortalized within half a year? It can be harvested in one season? A moment later, she kicked me. How disrespectful. How disrespectful. I want to strike her with lightning. Another kick. Heavens, this is the second time I've been treated like this since I was established. His first time was also with her. Damn it. In the end, the stone comforted itself. Only villains and women are hard to deal with. The heavenly Dao will not lower itself to her level. The truth would be revealed one day. By the way, Supreme Divinity, when did you wake up? How depressing. How depressing. How depressing. I don't want to break my promise. But I can't tell her. How depressing. The stone seemed to like talking to itself. It was refreshing inside when the sound of a breeze came from outside. Chapter 2149. Someone was coming. A man floated down from the lonely peak. The man was wearing a striking purple robe. His originally elegant eyes were cold, his hair was a little messy, and his thin lips were a little pale. He looked a little like a wolf. This man was none other than the sub-god Luo Jiuchen. He stood on the lonely peak and looked at the big white stone coldly.
Why?
Why can't I wake you up? I've already agreed to the 3 conditions of that little brat. I should be able to wake you up and become the guardian of the heavenly Tao. Why don't you recognize me? The heavenly Tao stone stood there proudly. It was a piece of snow-white stone, and it disdained to shine on him. However, it was saying, an evildoer wants to become the guardian of the heavenly Tao? Do you think I'm stupid? What do you want me to do? How can I become the master of this world? Luo Jiuchen's voice was filled with grief and indignation. Stop dreaming. It will never happen. Didn't they say that after the main god ascends, the sub-god can naturally become the main god? Why can't I do it after working so hard for so long? A defective product will always be a defective product. I hate counterfeits. The heavenly Tao stone had learned a lot of modern words from Ning Xuema, so it couldn't help but use them at this moment. Of course, these words were all in its mind. Outside, it was still a cold and hard stone, proudly refusing to give Luo Jiuchen an explanation. Why do I feel that my memory is wrong these days? I vaguely remember that after those people sealed Zisha 50,000 years ago, Shen Juli took revenge on me and plotted against me. That's why I was sealed in the heavenly Tao Bell. But now, in my memory, that girl and Shen Juli worked together to seal me in the heavenly Tao Bell. What's going on? Because that girl changed part of history, your memory is naturally wrong. But I won't explain it to you. Also, there was no array in the Fanteon Palace before. Why did it add so many arrays overnight? Is Shen Jili back? The heavenly Tao stone was silent. It was a little nervous. The runes inside flickered, and the lotus petals that were originally in a blooming state gradually closed, wrapping the little boy tightly inside layer by layer. However, he still felt that it wasn't safe enough, so he quietly moved a few more crystal pillars over, hiding the crystal lotus firmly in the depths of the pillars.
No.
Shen Juli should have already immortalized. Otherwise, it would be impossible for his original body to appear in this world. One of the incantations that bastard set up was, if he doesn't immortalize, I can't leave the bell of heaven. Luo Jiuchen was still muttering to himself. The heavenly law stone gloated. In fact, you have been fooled. Even if Xin Yanma did not let you go, you would still come out of the heavenly law bell. It would just be a year later. Since he didn't come back to life, who set up the mechanism array in Fanteon Palace?
Heavenly Tao stone, is it you?
Luo Jiuchen also knew how to reason and gradually put a hat on the heavenly Tao stone's head. The heavenly Tao stone. Luo Jiuchen, you won't be able to understand the reason behind this even if you crack your head. Heavenly Tao stone, will you never acknowledge me? Luo Jiuchen was getting angrier as he spoke. The heavenly Tao stone, yes. Heavenly Tao stone, you will never know how hard I worked to get this position. How can you treat me like this? Luo Jiuchen's voice was getting colder and colder. Since you are so unfair, why should I fight for this position? Chapter 2150. A sword slowly appeared in his palm. A sword with purple light flashing on it. As soon as it appeared, a ghostly howl could be heard from within. Heavenly Tao stone. Sky Demon sword. Luo Jiuchen had actually refined a Sky Demon sword. The refining process of the Sky Demon sword was similar to Ning Xuema's Sky Splitter sword, but it was crueler. It was also more powerful. The Sky Splitter sword was made from the bones of countless demons, and the main body of the Sky Demon sword was made from the souls and bones of 100 immortal generals. The resentment attached to it was even more shocking. Once cut by it, the resentment on it would immediately surge in and turn a person into a demon. And a brainless demon that only knew how to kill. This person was crazy. Where did he find so many immortal generals? He was clearly on the verge of going mad. Why did he take out this sword now? The heavenly Tao stone was on guard. Luo Jiuchen narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. That girl is very capable. She actually turned the situation around and resolved the crisis in just a few days. This is really beyond my expectations. It will be a bit difficult for me to plot against her again. However, the more she is like this, the more I seem to like her, and the more I want to get her. I want her to groan and beg for mercy under me. I want her to bloom for me. As a former subgod, the heavenly Tao stone was very disdainful of him for saying such dirty words. The crystal lotus in its body suddenly swayed slightly. The heavenly Tao stone was caught off guard, and the entire stone swayed along with it. Of course, it was big and didn't sway much. If one didn't observe it carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it. However, it didn't expect Luo Jiuchen to notice it. His eyes lit up, and his gaze became as sharp as needles. Heavenly Tao stone, so you have a reaction. Heavenly Tao stone. Could it lie a little and say that it was blown by the wind? Luo Jiuchen's gaze was like a tangible drill as he sized up the heavenly Tao stone from top to bottom. His gaze became colder and colder, and the heavenly Tao stone became more and more alarmed. Heavenly Tao stone, I will count to 10, and you will shine for me. Otherwise, I will cut you in half right here. Luo Jiuchen slowly raised his sword. The heavenly law stone froze. In the past, it would not be threatened like this. Once someone disrespected it, it would immediately summon tribulation, lightning to strike that person. But now, it was using all its power to revive the Divine Lord in its body, and it could not stop. Once it stopped, all its previous efforts would be wasted, and it would really break its promise. He would be scolded to death by that girl. Because of this, it was unable to summon the lightning tribulation. It could only allow this demigod to be arrogant in front of it. It was a heavenly law stone, so it was not afraid of any weapons. However, the heavenly demon sword was too powerful, and its original body might not be able to withstand it. Even if it wasn't split into two, there was still a possibility that there would be a crack on the stone body. However, as a dignified heavenly Tao stone, it would definitely not lower its head to evil forces. It seemed that there was only one of the 36 stratagems left: escape. Thus, Luo Jiuchen, who was counting with a cold voice, saw a scene that he would never forget. That huge white stone seemed to have grown legs as it suddenly rolled over. A gust of wind blew past, and it rolled down the cliff. Luo Jiuchen never knew that the stone could move. By the time he reacted, the stone was already falling like a meteor. Chapter 2151. Furthermore, the place where it fell was not the right side of the mountain but the back. Below the back of the mountain was not an ordinary land, but a sea of stars. When Luo Jiuchen hurriedly chased after it, the stone had already fallen into the sea of stars and became one of the billions of stars. Luo Jiuchen floated in the air and floated back and forth a few times, but he still could not find its whereabouts. There was no other way. Under his feet were all star stones similar to the heavenly Tao stone. He could not tell which one was the real one. He was simply gnashing his teeth. Why did no one ever tell him that this stone could run on its own? Heavenly Tao, if you don't let me become a god, then I will completely become a demon. I must become the ruler of this divine demon continent. Luo Jiuchen shouted. His voice spread through the sea of stars like a mountain's echo. Heavenly Tao stone, I will definitely find you. I will cut you into 17 or 18 pieces. Luo Jiuchen said fiercely. The sea of stars flickered, and countless star stones came and went in the air as if they were changing their own trajectories. Each stone was like a star, constantly moving, and each had their own trajectories. It was a dazzling sight. In a very remote corner, an inconspicuous star silently fell down, never to be seen again. There were too many star stones under his feet, so Luo Jiuchen naturally did not notice that one. He stood in the air and laughed. So the heavenly Tao stone also has such a cowardly side. Then, what is the use of me protecting you? I have been compromising for tens of thousands of years, but it was just a joke. However, it is not too late to understand this point now. Sooner or later, I will make all the living beings in the 6 realms tremble at my feet. Heavenly Tao stone, you are no exception. His wanton laughter spread far and wide. Originally, he always had the idea of becoming a supreme god in the future, so he was always timid when doing things. When he did bad things, he did not dare to do it personally and had to take many detours. Now, he suddenly thought it through. Once he went all out, there might not be many people in this world who could be his opponent. He was filled with grief and indignation as he laughed loudly. He did not know that his surroundings had quietly changed. Originally, his body was shrouded in a layer of faint purple gold light. Now, that golden light was gradually disappearing and was replaced by a pure purple that flowed like a stream. That purple was extremely dense, faintly tinged with black. The starstones around him seemed to have been stimulated by the murderous aura around him. The speed of their movement suddenly changed, and a gust of wind blew out from the starry sky. The wind grew stronger and stronger, and it gradually formed a hurricane that blew towards the six worlds. Little Nianma looked up at the sky. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and lightning flashed from time to time, as if doomsday was coming. Ka! A beam of red light seemed to tear the sky apart as it stretched across the entire world. As the red light flashed past, it was accompanied by the sound of thunder. It was right above Mo Palace, and it shook the ground beneath their feet.
Hua!
After the thunder and lightning, heavy rain poured down. It was as if the Milky Way had exploded, and the world was covered in a layer of red. The rain wasn't ordinary rain. Instead, it was blood-red water. The water even carried a faint smell of blood that permeated the entire world. The rain fell on the wizardry barrier above Mo Palace, and the sound of the rain was deafening. The rainwater gathered into a stream on the barrier and flowed freely to the surroundings. Little Nianma clenched his fists. The weather had been like this for half a month. There was no sunlight all day long, and the clouds were always rolling. At a certain time, there would be a bloody rain. Chapter 2152. The blood rain was like a strong acid, corrosive and corrosive. Wherever it went, holes would be corroded. Fortunately, there was a protective barrier set up by Ning Xuema above Mo Palace. Otherwise, the newly built Mo Palace would have been corroded into a hornet's nest. This kind of weather was obviously abnormal, but it wasn't just the weather that was abnormal. The people of the Six Realms were also abnormal. First of all, the immortal world was abnormal. The immortal generals who had fought alongside the Celestial Emperor and were forced to cut off one of their arms had all disappeared within a day. The relatives of those immortal generals thought that it was the demon world's doing, that it was another punishment from the Devil Master. So they tearfully came to Mo Palace to ask for their captives and knelt in front of Mo Palace, begging the Devil Master to let them go. At that time, Ning Xuema had just returned from Fantion Palace. What she saw was a dense crowd of people begging for her permission. After she appeared, she sent those people away with a few words. Then, she ordered head steward Himu to quickly send people to investigate. The results of the investigation were shocking. According to the families of the missing generals, they had received a transmission from General Manager Himu when they were recuperating at home. Then, they hurriedly went out alone and never returned. The family waited anxiously for a long time, but when no one came back, they were worried and went out to look for them. But they found nothing. General Manager Himu swore that he had never sent a transmission to them. There must be a misunderstanding. Ning Xuema naturally believed General Manager Himu. Her first suspect was Luo Jiuchen. But what was Luo Jiuchen's purpose? However, no one could guess what was going on. The demon world had always been very good at finding people. Ning Xuema immediately sent experts to investigate the whereabouts of the missing generals. 3 days later, they finally found them. However, they didn't find living people but corpses. Corpses that had died extremely tragic and strange deaths. The lumbar vertebrae of all the corpses had been removed, and not even a trace of their souls was left. Ning Xuema's heart sank. This was obviously caused by cultivating some kind of evil art or refining some kind of evil treasure. She immediately sent people to look for Luo Jiuchen's whereabouts in the Six Realms, but that person seemed to have disappeared. Ning Xuema used countless methods, but still couldn't find him. However, people began to disappear frequently in the Six Realms, never to be found again. The weather in the Six Realms became more and more abnormal day by day. Then there was lightning and blood rain. The enemy was in the dark while he was in the light. How could it be easy to find someone who is good at transformation in the 6 realms? In the past half a month, everyone in the 6 realms was in danger, and all kinds of rumors were flying around. These days, Ning Xuema had been busy with the investigation and did not have much time to accompany her son. Little Nianma also knew that he should not be a burden to his mother during this critical period, so he had been obediently staying in Mo Palace. There was a barrier around Mo Palace, and the security at the entrance was extremely tight. People from the outside would not be able to get in. As long as little Nianma stayed in Mo Palace, he would be safe. Apart from practicing and studying, he would also take a stroll in the garden. Right now, he was walking in the garden of Mo Palace. Because they had not seen the sun for a long time, the flowers in the garden looked withered and listless. This damned Luo Jiuchen. Look at what he had done to the 6 realms. If it were not for this bastard, perhaps he and his mother would have a better life. Little Nianma sat down against a stone and took out a book. When he was about to revise the parts that he did not understand, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw General Manager Heimu standing not far behind him. Chapter 2153. Young Master, are you unhappy? Head Butler Heimu asked with a smile as he approached him. Little Nianma was a little listless. Of course, I am unhappy because I am stuck in the palace every day. It is all Luo Jiuchen's fault.
He was a little surprised.
Heimu, aren't you talking to my mother in the front hall? Why are you here all of a sudden? Have you finished your discussion? Head Butler Heimu smiled casually. Yes, it is not much. It was just a few words. Young Master, do you want to go out? Little Nianma lay on the stone behind him and crossed his legs. He was bored with a piece of grass in his mouth. Of course, who wants to be stuck in the same place every day? For the past few days, every time his mother went out, she would leave him in Mo Palace, and the 8 divine beasts would never leave her side. When his mother was in the Mo Palace, she had to deal with a lot of things. Most of the time, she still liked to bring her son with her. However, Shun Nianma was only a child who was not even 1 year old. There were many things that he did not understand, and it was very boring. Naturally, he would get impatient and occasionally run out to play in the garden. He had walked around the garden many times, and he remembered the position of every stone in the garden. In fact, there was nothing to play with. If it weren't for that bastard Luo Jiuchen hiding in the dark like a mouse, his mother would have taken him out to play long ago. Head Butler Heimu showed sympathy. Young Master, why don't I take you out to play? Little Nianma's eyes lit up, but he immediately shook his head. No, my mother does not allow me to go out. I can secretly take you out to play for half a day. The great devil will not find out. Head Butler Heimu tried to persuade him. Little Nianma was stunned. He looked up and stared at him. Suddenly, he jumped up.
No.
You are not Heimu. Head Butler Heimu frowned slightly. Young Master, I am Heimu.
What happened to you?
He approached him as he spoke. Little Nianma quickly retreated. He waved his hand, and a shiny short sword was unsheathed. With a flick of his finger, a blue light flew straight to the sky. His set of movements was extremely smooth. The blue light was used as an alarm. As long as it exploded in the sky, his mother would sense it and quickly appear by his side. Unexpectedly, just as his blue light flew into the air, Chief Steward Heimu waved his sleeve. Like a rolling cloud, it actually wrapped around the blue light that hadn't yet exploded. The blue light exploded within his sleeve, but not a single flame came out. Little thing, you're really alert. Manager Heimu smiled as he watched him approach step by step. However, do you think you can escape from the palm of my hand? This time, you have to come with me even if you don't want to. Suddenly, his hand shot out like a snake and tried to grab Shun Nianma. Shun Nianma suddenly took a step forward and avoided the attack at the critical moment. He turned around and ran, shouting as he ran, "Mother! Mother!" Luo Jiuchen had entered Mo Palace. Luo Jiuchen has entered Mo Palace. Her voice was sharp and pierced through the clouds. That person was Luo Jiuchen. He also did not expect that he would miss his target. Only then did he remember that Ning Xuema seemed to know a very special footwork to escape. It seemed that she had taught this footwork to her son. Little thing, you actually recognized me. You are not stupid, but it is useless for you to shout. I have already set up a soundproof wizardry barrier here. No one can hear you. Luo Jiuchen chased after him. Chapter 2154. There was a huge gap between their abilities. Although little Nianma was able to run for more than 10 meters with his special footwork, Luo Jiuchen still managed to catch up with him. Luo Jiuchen laughed. Little thing, you better follow me obediently. He reached out and grabbed one of little Nianma's arms.
Ouch! Ouch!
Something on little Nianma's waist suddenly made a sharp noise. At the same time, his body suddenly burst into a circle of red light. Luo Jiuchen felt as if he had been electrocuted. His wrist went numb, and he subconsciously let go. Little Nianma took the opportunity to roll out. He rolled too quickly and hit a rock with a bang. Almost at the same time, a white light appeared out of nowhere, and the ground under him suddenly split open to form a large hole. He screamed and fell directly into the large hole. Luo Jiuchen was about to pick him up again, but when he saw the white light, he froze. Shin Nianma had already rolled into the big hole and disappeared. He looked into the hole, but it was dark and he could not see anything. He was afraid that the big hole was a trap arranged by Ning Xuema. He hesitated in front of the big hole, but the big hole closed in an instant. He was stunned and was wondering if he should use the underground drilling spell to go in and take a look. Suddenly, there was a soft sound not far away. He froze. The wizardry barrier that he set to block all sound was broken. Then, he heard Ning Xuema's voice coming from afar. Nianma. Luo Jiuchen did not want to face Ning Xuema at this time. He flashed and flew straight to the sky. Luo Jiuchen. Ning Xuema had not arrived, but she had already swung her sword. Luo Jiuchen's body flashed out of thin air and avoided Ning Xuema's fatal attack. He did not want to fight. He still rose into the sky and raised his hand to tear the wizardry barrier. He had already flashed out like lightning and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only his laughter could be heard in the air. Little Xuema, don't worry. We will have the chance to meet sooner or later. When he said the last word, his voice was very far away. It was still raining blood outside, and the raindrops were blowing in through the torn enchantment. Ning Xuema's face was pale. She raised her hand and sealed the barrier again. Although she had only met Luo Jiuchen briefly, she could tell that little Nianma was not in his hands. At this time, her priority was naturally to find her son. Everything else could wait. Because the enchantment was torn open, an ear-piercing alarm sounded from Mo Palace. Countless figures rushed in this direction. The ones at the very front were none other than Manager Heimu and the 8 divine beasts. Qi's loud voice could be heard from afar. What's going on? Someone is invading? Ning Xuema took a deep breath and said solemnly, Luo Jiuchen was here. He tore open the barrier and escaped again. His target this time was little Nianma. However, he failed to take Nianma away. She was concise and went straight to the point. While she was talking, she quickly looked for the whereabouts of her son nearby. She had specially installed a special alarm on her son. As long as someone caught her son involuntarily, the alarm would automatically go off. Not only would it pop up a spell to attack the kidnapper, but it would also let Ning Xuema know immediately and quickly locate him. Manager Heimu and the 8 divine beasts were surprised and also a little puzzled. How did that bastard Luo Jiuchen get in? We have set up a divine mirror at the entrance of the palace. As long as someone with a divine aura sneaks in, he will be revealed. Chapter 2155. Ning Xuema said in a low voice, Luo Jiuchen has been possessed by the devil. There is no longer any celestial aura in him. Although it was only a short encounter, Ning Xuema could still see the dark aura around Luo Jiuchen. The demigod possessed by the devil? General Manager Heimu and the others looked at each other in shock. If the demigod was not possessed by the devil, He would have a lot of scruples in his actions and would not do anything out of the ordinary. However, once he was completely possessed by the devil, he would have no scruples in his actions and would be able to do whatever he wanted. Luo Jiuchen's kung fu was close to the peak. If he used it to practice some evil spells, his future cultivation would be unimaginable. Ning Xiuma naturally thought of this as well. She closed her eyes slightly. Luo Jiuchen would be the strongest opponent in her life. Sooner or later, they would have a life and death battle. She had to make the heavenly water poison as soon as possible, but she still lacked 2 special herbs.
No.
Ning Xiuma, the 8 mythological beasts, and general manager Heimu turned the entire garden upside down, but they could not find little Nianma. Ning Xiuma's face was pale, and her hands and feet were cold. Where did the child go? Luo Jiuchen did not take him away, so how could he disappear? Did Luo Jiuchen kill him? The child was her only hope to survive. If something happened to him again, Ning Xiuma almost did not dare to think about it anymore. There were a lot of things to deal with these days. She was busy from morning to night every day. She woke up earlier than the chicken and slept later than the dog. She had to deal with all kinds of affairs. Even so, she often had insomnia. In the dead of the night, Shunjuli's shadow would always appear in her heart, making her feel as if she was drowning. Lovesickness was like a knife. If she did not think about it, it would be unforgettable, but she had no place to talk about it. In fact, she also wanted to get drunk. She also wanted to wantonly get drunk and sleep like many frustrated girls. She also wanted to escape from this bitter and fucked up reality. However, she could not. She still had her son to protect and the devil world to protect. Luo Jiuchen was still eyeing her in the dark, trying to take her down. The bloody reality did not allow her to relax in the slightest. In order to pacify and stabilize the hearts of the people, she could not even reveal the slightest bit of dispirited emotions. She had been desperately persevering and working hard. She didn't want her son to be disappointed, hurt, or cry again, but now his son had disappeared. The only thing she could sense was that her son was still alive. He couldn't sense anything else. She had installed a tracking device on her son, but it seemed to have malfunctioned. She couldn't sense it at all. Did Luo Jiuchen have other helpers? He came to distract her, but the helper took her son away. Her heart was on fire. Fortunately, Mo Palace would automatically shut down once the alarm rang. If Luo Jiuchen had help, then the other party shouldn't be able to escape the palace search. Search the entire palace. Little Nianma did not expect to fall into a black hole. The hole was extraordinarily deep, and it took him a few minutes to reach the bottom. Fortunately, his skin looked soft and tender now, but he had already trained his muscles and bones to not be afraid of bumps, so he was not injured in the process of rolling down. He got up dizzily and patted the robe on his body. He was still a little shaken. He was almost caught by that bastard. Fortunately, there was a hole here. Chapter 2156. He looked up and saw that it was pitch black. He could not see the top, and Luo Jiuchen did not chase after him. Was he safe for the time being? He heaved a sigh of relief. The cave was pitch black, as if it had not seen sunlight for thousands of years. With his current night vision, he could not see anything clearly. He could only touch it with his hands. He touched the surrounding. The walls were hard, cold, and a little smooth. It seemed that something had crashed down and created such a huge pit. Shen Nianma scratched his head. He was very familiar with the garden above. He even remembered how many ant nests there were. How could he not know that there was such a strange cave here? He did not know that the cave above had been closed. He was afraid that Luo Jiuchen would chase after him, so he did not dare to stay in the cave for long. The ground under his feet was getting harder and harder. Slowly, he began to see a light blue light. A moment later, he found himself in an icy blue crystal cave. The walls on both sides and the top of his head were crystal clear. The crystal tunnel was still long and narrow. He did not know where it led to. Children were born to love adventure, and little Nianma was no exception. He continued to move forward along the tunnel. He was surprised to find that the crystal tunnel was colorful. First it was blue, then yellow, and then red. There were red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple colors. The deeper he went, the purer the crystals that formed the cave walls. Finally, there was a bright light in front of his eyes. There was a bright crystal hall in front of him. Little Myanmar had never seen such a beautiful and magnificent crystal hall. The hall was formed naturally. The shape was not regular, but it was full of a natural wild charm. The hall was octagonal. There were crystals of different colors in the hall. The purity was unprecedentedly high. The blue ones were like water, the red ones were like fire, and the black ones were like ink. Every one of them was crystal clear. It was so beautiful that people could hardly take their eyes off it. After all, little Myanmar was well educated. He could vaguely see that this seemed to be a natural crystal array. It was well known that crystals gathered energy, and the crystal cave had a very strong energy gathering effect. The center of the crystal array should be the energy gathering point. It could absorb the energy from the crystals from all directions. Generally speaking, the crystals in the center of the array should be the purest and most valuable. They should also have the most energy. However, at this moment, what stood in the center of the crystal formation was not a crystal, but a white stone. Moreover, it was a stone with missing corners and edges. Its shape was too ordinary. It looked like a mountain rock that could be seen everywhere in the mountains. Other than its snow-white color, there was nothing special about it. Compared to the countless crystals around it, it was like an ugly duckling that had fallen into a flock of swans. It was an eye-catching ugliness. Little Myanmar circled the white stone twice and reached out to touch it again. This white stone looked like a stone and felt like a stone. No matter how you looked at it, it was actually a big stone. So ugly. Little Myanmar commented and shook his head. It's so ugly, he added. The ordinary-looking white stone. Strange. Why would such an ugly stone occupy the center position? It feels like a sparrow occupying a phoenix's nest. Little Myanmar complained again. White stone. Little Myanmar raised his hand and knocked on the white stone with his knuckles. Chapter 2157. Little Myanmar raised his little hand and knocked on the white stone with his knuckles. He tilted his head to listen and shook his head. It does not sound like a beautiful jade wrapped in stone. The white stone was speechless. What was a beautiful jade? It was 10,000 times more precious than a beautiful jade. No, it was 100 million times more precious. It resisted the urge to flash a bright light and blind the little kid's eyes. It continued to play the role of a stone quietly. This white stone was the heavenly law stone. It fell from the Fantion Palace and quietly drilled into the ground. The spiritual energy underground was not as strong as the Fantion Palace, and it needed to accumulate energy to maintain the resurrection of the Divine Lord in its body. Therefore, it drilled into the ground to find a crystal cave that could provide it with energy. It was the heavenly law stone, the ancestor of all stones. Naturally, it was very sensitive to crystals. Soon it found it here. It slightly polished the place and transformed it into a crystal array. It squatted in the middle of the array and absorbed the energy of the crystals. It sincerely felt that it was giving these crystals face by squatting in the center of these crystals. The crystals should be in awe of its presence. It was these crystals that were not worthy of it, not that it was not worthy of these crystals. It thought that it was the most primitive, mysterious, and beautiful stone in the world. However, it did not expect that one day it would be despised and called ugly. Could the word ugly be related to it? Could it? Could it? Could it? The little kid had no taste. It was the heavenly law stone. It would not lower itself to the same level as a child. The heavenly law stone resisted the urge to flood its mind. It was still there with an unfathomable look. After all, the heavenly law stone was the only magical stone left in the world. Generally, it could control the land wherever it went. It could quickly sense everything that happened on the land. When little Myanmar was in danger, it did not want to intervene. However, the Divine Lord in its body seemed to have sensed it. In an instant, It controlled the stone to use the earth-splitting technique to suck little Myanmar in. Although he was sucked in, the Heavenly Law Stone did not want to communicate with the little kid. Therefore, it let him wander around and found him here. There were crystals everywhere. Any one of them was priceless. It could be used to make many energy weapons and magical weapons. The Heavenly Law Stone thought that the little kid would be cheering when he saw the best crystals in the cave. However, it did not expect that he only looked around the hall and turned his attention to the stone. They even circled around it. The Heavenly Law Stone was a little scared by his spinning, but it was still a little relieved. This child was indeed the son of the Supreme Divinity. He was able to tell that the Heavenly Law Stone was extraordinary. However, it did not expect that the little fellow would give it an ugly evaluation. The Heavenly Law Stone's expression didn't change, but its heart suffered 10,000 damage. He had the illusion that his worldview had collapsed. In fact, it had already sensed that Luo Jiuchen had left and that Ning Xuema and the others were looking for the child, but it still refused to make any reaction. That little girl had scolded it and even kicked it a few times, hurting its dignity as the Heavenly Tao Stone. Then, it would let her suffer while losing her son. As for the little thing in front of him, once it had wandered around enough, it would probably find its way out on its own. How long could a child play in a crystal hall? At most, he would pick up a few crystals. Therefore, the Heavenly Law Stone did not take Shen Myanmar seriously. He even secretly made up his mind that when this little thing tried to pry open the crystals, he would make sure that the surrounding crystals were firm enough so that the little guy would not be able to pry them open. Chapter 2158. Sure enough, Shen Myanmar wandered around the hall looking for the crystals. Soon, he found a red crystal pillar and placed his little hand on it. Apparently, he wanted to break the crystal pillar with his power. However, the red crystal pillar was very strong. He could not break it with ordinary methods.
Swoosh.
Little Myanmar took out a shiny dagger and cut the bottom of the crystal pillar.
Ha ha ha.
He actually used a weapon to cut the crystal. Did he think that it was as easy as cutting tofu? Did he know that the crystal was very fragile? Even if a sword could cut it, it would also break the pillar. It could not be used at all. This was common sense, but the little guy did not know. He was still a child. The stone was dying of laughter. The Heavenly Law Stone was overjoyed. However, the Heavenly Law Stone was not amused for long. If it had eyes, it would have opened them wide at this moment. It saw that the dagger in little Myanmar's hand had cut the incredibly beautiful red crystal off neatly. What kind of dagger was that? The Heavenly Law Stone's attention shifted to the dagger in little Myanmar's hand. It was surprised to find that the material of the dagger was very special. It was actually made of an extremely rare meteorite iron. Moreover, it was attached with an extremely strong power. Any hard object would be cut by this dagger. It did not expect that he could own such a weapon at such a young age. Needless to say, it was given to her son by Ning Xuema. She had spent a lot of money on this son of hers. While the Heavenly Law Stone was murmuring in its heart, it suddenly felt something. When it pulled its attention back, it saw little Myanmar holding the crystal and walking around it. The Heavenly Law Stone was confused. This crystal is the most beautiful and rare. This position should belong to it. However, it is occupied by such a stupid stone. Little Myanmar talked to himself. The Heavenly Law Stone was shocked. Little Myanmar carefully put the crystal aside and then walked directly to the Heavenly Law Stone. The Heavenly Law Stone was alert. What was he trying to do? Little Myanmar channeled his power of telekinesis into his hands. He opened his arms and hugged the white stone. It was a small corner. The white stone was not small. He was too short to carry it. It was being hugged. It was being hugged by a little kid. The Heavenly Tao Stone subconsciously wanted to send this little thing flying, but it was afraid that if it didn't control its strength well, it would directly smash this child into a meat patty. While Gu Shijio was struggling, little Myanmar's two little arms had already hugged it and shook it vigorously. The Heavenly Tao Stone snorted. This little fellow's strength was indeed not small, but he wanted to shake it? That was undoubtedly an ant trying to shake a tree. Not to mention him. Even if that bastard Luo Jiuchen came, it would be extremely difficult to shake it. As long as it didn't want to move its nest, even 10 tyrannosaurs wouldn't be able to move it. Little Nianma's face turned red. He tried for a long time, but he still could not move the eyesore away. Finally, he was angry. With a whoosh, he took out his dagger. Heavenly Dao Stone. This little bastard wanted to chop it up. Did he know that he would be struck by lightning if he dared to disrespect the Heavenly Dao Stone?
Swoosh.
Little Nianma did not listen to it. The dagger flashed in the air and slashed at the base of the Heavenly Law Stone. Obviously, he wanted to cut off the top of the stone and put his broken crystal at that position to absorb the essence from all sides. The Heavenly Law Stone immediately guessed his purpose and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 2159. It was true that the newborn calf was not afraid of the tiger. The ignorant were fearless. Pa. The red crystal that had been placed properly suddenly broke into pieces and scattered all over the ground. Needless to say, it was the work of the Heavenly Law Stone. It only needed to use a little bit of its power to shatter the red crystal. Little Nianma was shocked. He turned around and realized that the red crystal was broken. There was no wind in the cave, and he clearly placed the red crystal firmly. How could it suddenly fall to the ground and break into pieces? He did not care anymore. He had to move the white stone away first, and then look for other red crystals. His mother's birthday was coming soon, and he wanted to use the red crystal to make a sword for his mother. Ordinary crystals were too brittle, but if he chose a good material and placed it in the center of the formation, the crystal would gather a large amount of energy and undergo fission. He could then use a spell to stimulate it, and it should be able to become as hard as cold iron, which would not shatter easily. Little Nianma's idea was very good, so he turned around and wanted to cut the stone. The Heavenly Law Stone was speechless. Little Nianma did not care about it and cut the stone's foot. After a loud noise, the dagger did cut the stone, but it was quickly reflected back. Not only did the sharp dagger bend, but it also broke one of Little Nianma's little hands. It was bleeding. Little Nianma felt a strong force rebounding back, and he took a few steps back. He looked at the dagger in his hand in disbelief and then looked at his bleeding hand. This inconspicuous white stone was actually so hard. It was the first time he saw such a hard stone. Little Nianma did not want to admit defeat. He stood there for a moment and suddenly rushed forward again. His little hand was stained with blood. His original intention was to use his psychokinesis to test how hard the rock was. Unexpectedly, just as his little hand touched it, the rock suddenly twisted and turned into a whirlpool. It pulled his little hand abruptly. Little Nianma's vision was blurred. After a flash of light, he found that he was in another place. It was the best crystal cave. Dazzling rainbow-colored crystals surrounded him. These crystals were stacked together in a certain order, forming countless indescribable patterns of formations. Each pattern was like a flowing talisman, spinning nonstop in the surroundings like water waves. It flashed with strange and variegated lights. The crystals here were definitely the best of the best. Compared to the crystals here, the red crystal he was holding just now was like dirt. Little Nianma fell directly into the room. He was still a little confused. After he got up, he looked around and was a little surprised. Was this the interior of the white stone? That's not right. The white stone is only the size of a round table, but this space is unbelievably big. It was at least several thousand feet wide. It was even bigger than the crystal hall he had seen earlier. What kind of place had he fallen to? Little Nianma could not help but wander around the cave to observe. The Heavenly Dao Stone, however, froze. It didn't want to swallow this little guy. No one had been able to enter its interior. Even Shanjuli had been nurtured by the Heavenly Dao Stone using its own divine power to gather the other party's soul, and now, this little guy had run in. He ran in. What was going on? What kind of physique did this little guy have? How could he have such an ability? The Heavenly Dao Stone was filled with questions, and the crystal pillar inside it was filled with question marks. Chapter 2160. Of course, the question mark was also a special language of the heavenly law. Only a few people could understand it, so it was not afraid of being seen by little Nianma. Little Nianma was wandering around in the crystal cave. Naturally, he saw the strange symbols on the crystal pillars. He only thought that it was a kind of spell, so he did not care at all. He was looking at the various crystal pillars in the cave, thinking about which one looked the best. After he had chosen it, he could directly take it away without having to put it in the middle of the crystal cave to condense it. He walked around and suddenly found that these crystal pillars seemed to be arranged in a kind of array. All the crystal energy was also concentrated in the center of the array. The energy here was even more amazing. So, what good things were hidden in the middle of this place? Little Nianma was very knowledgeable and knew a lot about arrays. After a few rounds, he finally bypassed the crystal pillars. The scene in front of him made his eyes widen. Crystal lotus. He saw a huge crystal lotus bud. The lotus was tightly closed, and its shape was very lifelike. Even the color was like a real lotus. The only difference was that the petals of this lotus were crystal clear. The veins on the petals were clear and shining slightly. It was strangely huge, at least 10 times bigger than an ordinary lotus. At a glance, there seemed to be dew rolling on it. It was so fresh that people could not wait to touch and smell it. Little Nianma did not know why, but when he saw this lotus bud, he felt very familiar with it, especially when the lotus had a faint cold fragrance. This fragrance, his little heart suddenly began to thump wildly. His pair of eyes were wide open. He could smell his father's breath on this crystal lotus. Father's breath. How long had it been since he smelled this breath? How long had it been? Obviously, it was only a few months, but he felt that it had been a few centuries. When he was in the Fantion Palace, every time he missed his father, he would secretly go to his father's bedroom to smell the remaining breath there. However, the breath was getting lighter and lighter, and in the end, it was almost too faint to be smelled. He even secretly hid a robe of his father and put it in his small storage space. When he missed his father very much, he would secretly take out the robe to smell it, and then hurriedly put it back. However, later on, the breath on the robe also faded. Especially after he and his mother were forced to leave Fantion Palace, it was even harder for him to smell his father's aura. Although he didn't say it out loud these days, he still yearned for it in his heart. He didn't expect to smell it here. The fragrance of the lotus was also very faint. If one didn't walk in front of it, they wouldn't be able to smell it. Even so, it was enough for little Nianma to be excited. He walked over step by step, greedily smelling the scent of the lotus. This smell was too good. It smelled so good that he wanted to cry, and his nose felt sore. Father. Little Nianma uttered 2 words as if he had been wronged. His big eyes were covered with a layer of tears. He missed his father. Speaking of which, when would father return? The heavenly Tao stone displayed a bunch of exclamation marks. This brat could actually tell that his father was hidden in the lotus bud. It was too amazing. Little Nianma could not help but gently press on the petals of the lotus flower. He was shocked. This petal felt too real. As if it was real. This lotus bud actually emitted the same fragrance as his father's. It must be a celestial flower. Chapter 2161. His mother seemed to like lotuses very much. Every time she saw a lotus, she would stop and look at it for a long time. Xiao He used to live in the side courtyard, but his mother treated her like a treasure. Later, when his mother heard that Xiao He was dead, she was sad for a long time. It was obvious that she loved lotuses to a certain extent. This time, if he could carry the lotus out of the cave and give it to his mother, she would be overjoyed. This should be the birthday present he wanted to give to his mother. However, the lotus was too big. It was 3 times bigger than him. He was afraid that he could not carry it. Little Nianma's mind was full of thoughts of picking the flower and bringing it home. His 2 little hands rubbed the petals, trying to get more of the flower's fragrance. There was still blood on his little hands. The blood gradually soaked into the petals. The petals that had been closed shook slightly, and a faint white light emerged. Little Nianma was stunned for a moment, and his eyes were wide open. The flower was going to bloom? If such a beautiful lotus really bloomed, would it be more beautiful and fragrant? Little Nianma looked at the flower with anticipation. The only worry in his heart was that if the flower bloomed, it would be bigger, and it would be more difficult for him to carry it. The lotus really showed signs of blooming. The top of the bud had begun to tremble and then stretched out little by little. Little Nianma could not help but hold his breath, but soon, he carefully exhaled breath by breath. The smell was too good. He did not want to miss a mouthful. A moment later, little Nianma was stunned again. The flower was obviously about to bloom, but when it was half open, it stopped moving. It even showed signs of gathering, and the fragrance was getting weaker. Oh, why did it stop? It was uncomfortable to be half open. Little Nianma was very uncomfortable. He could not help but go forward. Hey, Xiao Lian, are you not going to open it? Open it, open it. The flower shook. Even the heavenly law stone shook. When the heavenly law stone shook, the whole space shook. Little Nianma was shaken by the shaking. He quickly held on to a crystal pillar next to him to steady himself. What happened? Was it an earthquake? He looked around vigilantly. Fortunately, the space only shook a little, and there was no more movement. He turned to look at the lotus again. His little face was a little gloomy. The half-open lotus was tightly closed again. It was even tighter than before. Is this flower shy? It can't be. Little Nianma pondered for a moment. He tiptoed and approached the flower. His two little hands peeled the gap between the petals. Little Yen bloom. Bloom. The lotus trembled again, as if it was disgusted by him. The heavenly Dao stone couldn't bear to look at it anymore, and all sorts of gibberish appeared on the crystal pillar. The lotus seemed to be connected to little Nianma. The more he wanted to peel it, the tighter the lotus closed. Little Nianma could even feel the force of the closing petals. His strength was not as strong as the closing force of the lotus. Besides, little Nianma was worried that the petals of the lotus would be damaged, so he did not dare to use his full strength. He tried for a while, but to no avail.
Disappointed, he took 2 steps back.
He sniffed his little hand. The scent of the flower on his little hand was already very faint, as if it had been absorbed by the flower again. This flower was too stingy. She couldn't even bear to leave the fragrance for him. Little Nianma was a little angry and threatened. Xiao Lian, if you don't open up, I will cut you with my sword. He took out the dagger and waved it. Heavenly Dao stone. Oh no, this brat wants to kill his father. Chapter 2162. However, why did it feel so excited as if it was watching a good show? It actually wanted to watch the father and son fight against each other. Of course, the flower was not threatened by him and did not move at all. In fact, little Nianma was not afraid of anything. When he was angry, he dared to cause any trouble and kill anyone. In the past, if there was a flower that was so disobedient, he would probably kill it. However, he did not have the heart to do it now. It was not a good word to destroy a flower. He would rather not do such a thing. His mother said that boys should know how to be gentle with women. He would rather not kill the flower. Little Nianma tried to reason with it, but as soon as he opened his mouth, the petals retracted even more. He suddenly had an idea. Did the lotus not like this name? That's right. Although it's a flower bud, it's so big. Little Nianma thought for a moment and finally found a suitable sentence. Big Lian, the flower, was stunned. The heavenly law stone had the urge to burst into laughter. The surrounding crystal pillars were full of ha-ha-ha characters. Big Lian, can you open up a little? Let me have a look. Let me have a look. You don't know that I really like lotuses. My mother also likes them. Recently, she has been standing by the lotus pond in Mo Palace for half a day. She even went to the celestial kingdom to get the celestial lotus. However, no matter how beautiful they are not half as beautiful as you. If my mother sees you, she will be very happy. She will be very good to you. Although the lotus still did not move, the petals seemed to be less tightly closed. My mother has been very busy these days. Many people forced her, and she even died once. Later, she was reborn and saved the Devil Kingdom. However, she was not happy. She sleeps so late every day, but she has to wake up so early. There are a lot of things to deal with every day. It is really tiring. It will be her birthday in 10 days. I want to give her a gift to make her happy. Speaking of this, little Myanmar was a little sad. I have not seen her really happy these days. She really misses my father. She even called his name in her dreams and cried. The lotus trembled slightly. Dalian mother said that father went to a very, very far place to cultivate in seclusion. She also said that he would only return after a very, very long time. I really miss my father. I feel like he doesn't want me anymore. He doesn't want my mother anymore. Otherwise, why hasn't he come back yet? Has been a long time. Little Myanmar began to sniffle. When he was in Mo's palace, even if he missed his father, he didn't dare to show it. He didn't want his mother to be even sadder when she saw it, so he held back his tears. Now that there was no one else in this space other than him, he couldn't help but talk to the lotus flower. Of course, as he spoke, he also touched on his sore spot. He couldn't help but cry as he clung onto the lotus petals. Large teardrops dripped down along the petals. The petals seemed to have been scalded by his tears, and they bloomed slightly. Little Myanmar had been paying attention to the reaction of the lotus petals. When he saw the reaction, he was delighted. It seemed like this lotus needed to be watered by his tears. Little Myanmar was already good at crying. Coupled with the fact that he was really sad, he murmured while rolling his tears. He looked so pitiful. His voice was getting more and more choked, but the more he talked, the more he described himself as the most pitiful baby in the world. Chapter 2163. The lotus continued to cry as he tugged at it. It showed no signs of opening, nor did it show any signs of closing again. Little Myanmar suddenly thought of something. Xiaohe's mother used to ask him to water it with a drop of blood every day. She said that it would grow stronger. What about the big lotus now? Little Myanmar's eyes fell on his hand again. There were still some blood stains on his hand. Of course, there were also some mud stains. He used his little bloody hand to press on the bud just now, so the bud emitted a circle of white light and was about to open. Perhaps his blood had the effect of promoting the blooming of the flower. Why did it stop opening halfway? The more he pulled, the more it closed. Lotus was an extremely pure creature. Did it dislike his hands for being too dirty? Little Myanmar immediately cast a cleaning spell on himself to make himself feel refreshed. Then he used his fingertip to produce a big round drop of blood. He raised his hand and let the blood drop fall into the half-closed part of the flower bud. This was not ordinary blood. It was the blood of his heart. Although it was only a drop, the effect had always been very strong. When Xiaohe was dying, little Myanmar used this method to make her feel better for a few days. As soon as his blood dropped into the bud trembled slightly. A moment later, it emitted a circle of white light, and the petals slowly bloomed layer by layer. Little Myanmar widened his eyes. Everything in front of him was like a slow-motion movie. He looked at the huge lotus bud slowly blooming, and the cold fragrance was getting stronger. The scene when the petals bloomed was very beautiful. It was indescribably pleasing to the eye. Little Myanmar crossed his arms and looked at it in a relaxed manner. He wished that he could get a video recorder like what his mother said. He searched around in his storage space but could not find anything suitable. When he looked up again, his eyes suddenly widened as if he was struck by lightning. Amidst the layers of petals that gradually bloomed, a person appeared. First, it was the snow-white hair, then the picturesque eyebrows, then the shoulders, and finally the chest. Shin Myanmar stood there as if he was petrified. His little mouth was slightly open. He raised his hand to rub his eyes to take a look. Then, he rubbed his eyes again in disbelief. There was a little baby wrapped in the lotus. Moreover, it was an unbelievably beautiful baby. He had snow-white arms and legs that were as white as lotuses, and he was wearing a silver-white dudu that was faintly glowing. His snow-white hair was draped over his shoulders, covering most of his body. The baby's eyes were slightly downcast, and its light red lips were slightly pursed. Due to its beautiful appearance and the fact that it was sitting in the lotus with a belly band and lotus petals covering its front, little Nianma could not tell if it was a boy or a girl. The little child looked less than a year old. His eyes were closed, and he sat there motionlessly. His long eyelashes covered his eyes and face, and one could almost count them one by one. Was this a real person or a fake one? Little Nianma held his breath and took a closer look. The baby's chest rose and fell slightly. It was breathing. It's actually true. It's a real person. Ever since little Nianma was born, he had been wandering around with his parents or wandering around with various mythological beasts. He had never met anyone of the same age as him. Now that he suddenly met one, he was both surprised and delighted. What was even rarer was that this little baby looked to be only about 1 year old, much younger than him. The corners of little Nianma's mouth curled up into a smile. Every child wanted to be an adult, and Shen Nianma was no exception. Chapter 2164. Unfortunately, he was the only child in the Mo Palace. Moreover, he was protected by the 8 mythological beasts. Everyone treated him like a child. Now, he finally found a child who was younger than him. Moreover, judging by his attire, little Nianma vaguely felt that the attire of the child in front of him was very similar to the mythological figure that his mother had told him about. Was this a new gift from his mother? Therefore, he looked at the child and asked, Neza? Hong Haier? Ginseng babies? The child in the lotus still had his eyes closed. There was no movement at all, just like a small jade sculpture. Could it be that he was mistaken? Was this a nephrite jade sculpture? Little Nianma took a step forward and reached out his little hand, wanting to touch it. His mother said that there was a kind of robot that looked no different from a human on the surface. However, if one touched it, they could still feel it. The child in the lotus looked like a snow sculpture. It was so delicate that it seemed to melt when the wind blew. Little Nianma did not dare to touch it forcefully, so he only touched it gently. He touched the child's arm. Then, his lips twitched. The child that looked so real was actually a jade sculpture. It was hard and cold to the touch. It was not as soft as it looked. Little Nianma did not give up. He put his little hand closer to the child's nose. A moment later, his little hand fell down. The child was not breathing. It seemed that the jade sculpture was too real. Coupled with the light in the crystal cave, he actually thought that the child was breathing. The strange stone, the strange crystal cave, the strange crystal-like lotus, and the strange jade doll in the lotus, little Nianma was a little disappointed. He still hoped that the child was real. Just when he was disappointed, there was a slight cracking sound behind him. He turned around and was surprised. Behind him, there was a door that had split open. When he was sucked in, he could not find any way out. Now, the door suddenly appeared. In other words, he could go out. Little Nianma turned his head to look at the boy in the lotus again and had an idea. Could this child be a mechanism that could lead him out? No, it was not just a mechanism. All the energy in the crystal cave was concentrated in the lotus, and all the energy in the lotus was concentrated in the jade doll. Perhaps this jade doll could also cultivate into a human being. However, it lacked an opportunity. Little Nianma suddenly remembered that his blood seemed to be very effective. He immediately ran back to the lotus flower and stood on a crystal platform that was as tall as the lotus flower. He looked down at the child from above. Little Nianma looked like he was 3 or 4 years old, but the baby in front of her was less than a year old. Even if he stood up, he was still half a head shorter than Nianma. What's more, this little kid had been sitting the whole time. Little Nianma looked down at the baby and felt that the angle was perfect. The little baby remained motionless, as cold as jade. Little Nianma pondered for a moment. His face was full of smiles as he spoke to the baby kindly. Baby, Heavenly Dao Stone. Ha ha ha. The Heavenly Dao Stone's comments were all over the cave's crystal pillars. As for the child, Although he did not move at all, not even his eyelashes moved, he seemed to have stiffened for a moment. Fortunately, his movement was very subtle, so little Nianma did not notice it. Little doll, the fact that you and I can meet today proves that we are indeed fated. Chapter 2165. Little baby, we are destined to meet today. I like you very much. You should be able to become a spirit soon, right? You are just one step away. Just like the person who painted the dragon, as long as the eyes are painted, the dragon will become real and fly for thousands of miles. What I'm going to do today is to give you the finishing touch. I'll give you some essence blood. If you can turn into a human, then you'll be my baby. You have to listen to me. I'm going to take you home, give you new clothes, and play with you. The duty you're wearing is too revealing. When I was your age, I didn't even wear open-crotch pants. As he spoke, he forced another drop of blood from his fingertip and reached out to the boy. He wanted to press the blood on the boy's forehead. However, his hand froze in midair. The boy, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. The pair of eyes were as blue as the sea and as deep as the lake. Under the reflection of the crystal, there was a cold gleam flashing. The eyes fell on little Nianma, but no emotion could be seen.
Ah!
Little Nianma was caught off guard and was shocked. He staggered and fell off the crystal platform. The crystal platform was quite high, and little Nianma fell backward. Although he might not be injured, he was confident that there would be a big bruise on the back of his head. A white light flashed across the ground and wrapped little Nianma in it. Then, it carried him and flew out. A moment later, little Nianma stood in the crystal hall with a confused look. The inconspicuous big white stone was still in the same place. It was as if the colorful crystal cave, the lotus, and the boy were just a dream. Was he sent out? Or was it all just a daydream? It should not be a dream, right? How could a dream be so real? Did he violate the taboo inside and was sent out? The little doll was actually alive, and it was so beautiful. The moment he saw her, he felt a sense of closeness. He wanted to get close to her and hug her. No, he had to go in again. No matter what, he had to bring the little baby out and let his mother see the baby that he found. Little Nianma began to wander around the big, white stone. However, he could not even find a crack, let alone a door. Naturally, he did not give up and began to hit the white stone with his hands. Hey, let me in. Let me in. White stone naturally had no reaction. Little Nianma did not give up. He circled the big stone a few times and even touched the white stone with his little hand again. However, the miracle did not happen again. How could he be willing to give up? Unwilling to give up, he took out the dagger again to threaten her. However, after he repeated all the actions he had done before entering the white stone no longer opened its arms to him and let him in. Little Nianma stopped cursing and sat down on a crystal platform. Did he do something wrong? He just wanted a child to play with him. That way, when his mother was busy, he wouldn't be so bored. He obviously wanted to treat the little kid well and even wanted to give him his childhood clothes to wear. But the little kid obviously didn't appreciate it and actually threw him out like this. Was the little kid a stone fetus? It was just like how he was raised in the red stone, but he had parents. Did this kid have parents? He jumped up again and hit the white stone. Hey, little guy, you are not born with a stone fetus, are you? Do you have parents? I can take you to find your parents. Chapter 2166. Hey, don't ignore me. I really want to play with you. You must be very lonely here by yourself, right? I am quite bored, too. There are no other children to play with me. Can we play together?
Can you let me in again?
Just once. By the way, you look a little familiar, a little like me. No, you look a little like my father. Everyone, please forgive little Nianma's poor eyesight. In his eyes, his father had always been high and mighty. He was as indifferent as the clouds in the sky and as elegant as the wind in the mountains. Naturally, he would never have thought that his father would look so cute and even wear a doo-doo. Although Shan Julie had turned smaller in front of him, it was when he was 7 or 8 years old. The appearance of 7 or 8 years old was very different from when he was less than a year old. If not for the comparison, it was almost impossible to tell. Besides, the current Shen Juli did not want his son to recognize him. His temperament was very different from before, so little Nianma could not recognize him. Little Nianma walked around the white stone and tried his best to persuade it. However, his mouth was dry, and the white stone was still too lazy to respond. In the end, he was anxious and seemed to have thought of something. Oh, right. My mother is the best at breaking wizardry barriers. She must have a way to open this stone. I will go and find my mother to help me now. At this time, he finally remembered his mother. After a few words, he turned around and wanted to run away. Suddenly, the white stone behind him emitted a faint white light. Little Nianma subconsciously turned around and then widened his eyes. A line of words appeared on the white stone. Do not tell anyone about this. Was this a warning from the little boy? It seemed that the little boy did not want anyone to know his whereabouts. However, little Nianma clenched his little fists and arrogantly raised his eyebrows. He threatened, "Since you are not willing to let me in and play with me, I will tell someone else. Tell my mother." The white stone said, "Listen to me, and I will give you a surprise in 9 days." Little Nianma's eyes lit up. After all, he was still a child. All children like surprises. Little Nianma asked, "What surprise?" The white stone answered, "You will know when you come." Little Nianma replied, "Can I visit you on a regular basis?" White stone paused for a moment. "You can come once every 3 days." White stone reminded him again, "Remember, don't tell anyone, including your mother. A good boy should keep his promise." Okay. Little Nianma agreed, without hesitation. Even children would want to have their own private space. Although the baby in the stone was strange, he was very fond of little Nianma. Therefore, he was willing to share a little secret with him. Moreover, this secret was harmless. White stone added another line of words. "Go up, your mother and the others are looking for you. If anyone asks, you can say that you used the earth burrowing technique to escape into the crevice underground." This white stone was actually teaching him how to lie. Little Nianma looked at it. A good child will not lie. White rock. White lies are fine. Little Nianma was speechless. All right, you won't hurt my mother, right? White rock. Of course not. Little Nianma was still worried. Swear. White stone. I swear. Little Nianma was finally relieved. He smiled and squinted his eyes. Well, I will come to see you in 3 days. You still have to talk to me. White stone, okay. This little boy was really a man of few words, not a word more. Chapter 2167. Little Nianma wanted to confirm with him again, but another line of words appeared on the white stone. Your mother is worried. The short words were like a heavy hammer, and little Nianma suddenly realized what was going on. Yes, when Luo Juchen caught him, he accidentally triggered the alarm on his body, and it must have alerted his mother. He had not gone out for a long time, and his mother must be worried sick. Little Nianma no longer cared about anything else. He turned around and ran up the path he came from. The path led to the surface. Although the end of the path was sealed, little Nianma could go up by using the underground drilling technique. He ran for a while and occasionally looked back. Suddenly, he was shocked. The crystal path behind him disappeared as he ran, and it directly turned into an ordinary rock layer. If the crystal path disappeared, how could he come back in the future? Little Nianma wanted to run back and ask again, but the path had disappeared, and he could not go back. However, since the child promised to see him once every 3 days, there should be another path waiting for him after 3 days. Finally, he ran to the end of the path. It was the hole that he had fallen into. While he was thinking about using the underground drilling technique to go up, a faint red light suddenly flashed from the side of the hole. A woman came out from the wall of the hole. Mother! Little Nianma saw the woman and rushed directly into the woman's arms. The woman was Ning Xiuema. She was looking for her child crazily. Not only did she search all the big and small palaces in the Mo Palace, but she also did not let go of the underground. She personally used the underground drilling technique to go back and forth in search of a child. Just when she was about to lose all hope, she did not expect to find her son here, safe and sound. The moment Shin Nianma threw himself into her arms, her whole body froze. Then, she raised her arms and hugged the child tightly into her arms. She hugged him tightly, as if she was hugging a lost treasure. Shin Nianma almost could not breathe. "Mother?" Shin Nianma looked up from his mother's arms. The hole is just an ordinary hole, so even if it was dark, Shin Nianma could still see his mother's appearance. She looked like she was in a sorry state. Her hair was disheveled, and her body was dirty here and there. Her face was extremely pale, but her eyes were shockingly bright. Her body trembled slightly, but she suppressed her emotions and asked her son in a hoarse voice, "Where did you go just now?" She had searched this place earlier, and had also seen this natural cave. However, she had searched both inside and outside the cave, but she did not see her son. But now, he had suddenly appeared here. Shin Nianma remembered the promise he made with White Stone, so he did not dare to tell the truth. He only answered vaguely. The gist of it was that he had been chased by Luo Jiuchen, and in a moment of desperation, he had used the earth-burrowing technique to escape underground. Because he was afraid of being caught, he kept dodging until he accidentally bumped into a rock. He was a little dazed from the collision and was stuck in the crack of the rock until now. There were no loopholes in his words, and Ning Xuema didn't doubt him. She calmed herself down and checked her son's body to make sure that there was nothing wrong with him. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. Then, she took her son upstairs. "Shin Julie, why don't you want to acknowledge your son? Look, your son misses you very much. Yet, you hardened your heart and refused to acknowledge him. You are so cruel. I always thought that you had not woken up. It turns out that you have been awake for a long time. TSK, TSK. You have been staying in the bud for so long." Chapter 2168. Ha ha ha, my son called me little baby, and he was referring to you as the supreme being. Ha ha, what a joke. If this were to spread, I would be the biggest joke in the 6 realms. Haha, he even wants you to be his baby. Shun Julie, you actually used my body to talk to your son. This is a great disrespect to the Heavenly Tao. In the Crystal Cave, the Heavenly Tao Stone was happily chatting with Shin Julie on the lotus seat. Shin Julie closed his eyes and ignored it. Hey, why don't you say something? Can you not be so boring? Your son is quite talkative, unlike you. He's more like his mother. That little girl's mouth can poison people to death. By the way, that little girl seems to have been waiting for your return. Since you've already woken up, why don't you go and see her? She'll probably go crazy with joy when she sees you. A few days ago, she even came to the Fantion Palace to scold me. Shun Julie, who was sitting on the lotus seat, opened his eyes. His eyes were dark, but no one could tell what he was feeling. This person had never revealed his emotions. The Heavenly Tao Stone had known him for so many years, so it knew his personality very well. Trying to guess his thoughts from his expression was undoubtedly a fool's dream. The Heavenly Tao Stone almost wanted to shake its head, but it couldn't help but send another message. I know you can't go out yet, but you can let your son pass a message to her. At the very least, she won't be worried. It didn't want that little girl to scold it behind its back. It felt like it was sneezing. Shin Julie still didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. He had to recover as soon as possible. The Heavenly Tao Stone muttered to itself for a while.
Then it suddenly thought of something.
Don't tell me you don't want her to see your current appearance? Are you afraid that she'll laugh at you? Ha, your current appearance is indeed quite shameful. You're even smaller than your son. No wonder your son calls you little baby. The Heavenly Tao Stone was overjoyed again, and it sent another message. The message it sent was actually in Shun Julie's mind. Shun Julie finally said, "Shut up, Heavenly Tao Stone." After spamming here for so long, all she got in return was these 2 stiff words. She was a little disheartened. The Divine Lord's temperament was still the same as it had been for tens of thousands of years. It did not talk to it easily. The crystal cave finally quieted down. After a long while, the heavenly Tao stone couldn't help but write another line of words. I really feel that since you're a baby, you should be more lively to have more vitality, which suits your current appearance. Look at your son, he's alive and well now. Of course, Shun Juli did not respond to its complaints. After a while, the heavenly law stone brushed again. Oh right, why did you ask your son to come and see you once every 3 days? What kind of surprise do you want to give him 9 days later? Will you be able to fully recover by then? This time, Shun Juli finally replied. Why don't you make a guess? Heavenly Tao Stone. It didn't want to talk to this person anymore. Otherwise, it would be angered to death. Little Nianma was severely injured. The person who injured him was none other than his mother. When he returned to the ground, little Nianma realized that the Mo Palace had been turning the world upside down to look for him. The Mo Palace was already busy, and it was even busier now. Everyone's rhythm was disrupted. The main reason for this was that little Nianma did not listen to them. When he came out, Bai Zhe, one of the 8 mythological beasts, was with him. Chapter 2169. The main reason was that little Nianma was not obedient. When he came out, Bai Zhe, one of the 8 mythological beasts, was supposed to follow him. However, little Nianma did not want to be followed everywhere, so he made up an excuse to send Bai Zhe away first. That was why he was in danger in the garden. Since the child had been found, everyone was naturally relieved. Ning Xuema strengthened the wizardry barrier above Mo Palace a few more times. Even the 8 mythological beasts followed suit. It would be even more difficult for Luo Jiuchen to sneak in again. As for little Nianma, Ning Xuema almost wanted to give him a beating, but she could not bear to do so. In the end, he was punished by being locked in a small dark room. The 8 mythological beasts personally guarded the room. He was not allowed to come out until he finished copying the 8 scripts. It was the first time that little Nianma saw his mother so angry at him. He felt a little wronged. Although it was called a small dark room, it was actually a study room. There was a table and a stool in the study room, but there was no bed. Even if he did not sleep, it would take him 4 days to copy the 8 scripts. In fact, copying for a few days was not a big deal. The key was that he could not go to the baby in the white stone. With the 8 mythological beasts watching, he could not sneak out at all. He had to accept his fate and copy. He had to finish as soon as possible so that he could find the baby as soon as possible. He copied for a whole day. His wrist was sore, and he was so sleepy that his upper and lower eyelids kept fighting. Children were always sleepy. Now that he was copying something so boring, he could not help but feel sleepy. Unknowingly, he fell asleep on the table. Ning Xuema was busy until midnight. She did not return to her bedroom but went directly to the study room. Bai Zhe, who was waiting for her, reported, "The young master has been very obedient today. He has been writing and writing. He did not rest at all. He has just fallen asleep." This kid probably knew that he was wrong. How could he be so obedient? Ning Xuema was relieved. She asked Bai Zhe to rest while she walked into the room. Her heart ached when she saw her son lying there, sleeping soundly and drooling all over the floor. Although her son had caused a lot of trouble this time, it was not entirely his fault. Such a young child was at the age where he wanted to play. However, because of Luo Jiuchen, she had trapped her son in the Mo Palace and had people following him everywhere he went. Naturally, the child would be annoyed. It was naturally uncomfortable to sleep on his stomach like this. Ning Xuema carefully carried him up and casually conjured a big, soft bed and placed his son on it. Even if the kid was asleep, he knew that a big bed was more comfortable than a table. He immediately rolled on the bed and fell asleep again. Ning Xuema looked at the notes he had copied. They were horizontal and vertical, and he had copied them very carefully. However, she also found little Nianma's doodle on the table. Perhaps little Nianma was still too young to show any talent in drawing. There was a flower on the paper. Was it a flower? Ning Xuema tried to figure it out with uncertainty. A few large semicircles with lots of embellishments represented the overlapping petals. Even the heart of a flower was represented by a big circle. There seemed to be a person standing on the center of the flower. That person also had very simple lines. For example, the head was represented by a circle. The lines drawn on the circle represented the hair. The body was even simpler. 4 curved lines were drawn on an oval, which should represent the torso and limbs of this person. The 4 lines were twisted together. This should be meditation, right? Or was he practicing some kind of kung fu? Chapter 2170. Ning Xuema looked at the flower and the twisted figure and could not help but laugh. Little Nianma was quite imaginative. Naturally, she would not take the scribbles of a child to heart, so she put it back on the table. A gust of wind blew and flipped the paper over. Ning Xuema then realized that there were words on the back of the paper. The words were written by little Nianma, and they were quite neat. Ning Xuema was baffled by the few words he wrote on the paper. The words on the paper were, Big Lotus, Little Lotus, Baby. Ning Xuema's lips twitched. Big Lotus, Little Lotus? Was it possible that the kid did not draw a flower but a lotus? He even gave it a name. She looked at the little figure again. Was this the baby that he mentioned? Was this brat trying to say that copying this here was as boring as a child sitting on a lotus? Oh, he could actually draw a stream of consciousness. Ning Xuema could not help but laugh. Her eyes fell on a vase on the table. A lotus was blooming in the vase, and its fragrance was overflowing. Ning Xuema stared at the lotus for a moment, and the smile on her lips dimmed. Almighty, our son is really smart. If something really happened to him this time, not only would I be sorry to you, but I would also not be able to live. She closed her eyes slightly. The whole Mo Palace was following her lead. She could not be weak. No one knew how tired she was, and no one knew how scared she was when she could not find her son. However, there was no one for her to lean on. In the past, Shun Julie was her strong support. Now, no matter what happened, she had to face it alone. Her hands and feet were still cold until now. Almighty, when will you come back? When will you come back? Her mind flashed with the look on Shin Julie's face when she jumped into the black hole as a sacrifice. He almost swore that if he was reborn, he would never fall in love with her again. He was almost crazy at that time, but she had to do it. Did he hate her so much that he refused to be reborn? Countless speculations were rolling in Ning Xuema's mind. Pa. The pen in her hand was suddenly broken by her unintentional pinch. She didn't seem to feel the bamboo thorns piercing her palm. After a while, she sighed softly. Great God, even if you don't love me anymore, I still hope that you can be reborn. Quickly be reborn. I just want you to live. It doesn't matter if you love me or not. The familiar pain in the depths of her heart rose again. She closed her eyes and waited for the pain to pass. Baby. Little Nianma, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly turned over and mumbled a few words. Accompany me. I am bored. Ning Xuema was stunned at first, and then her heart felt as if it had been grabbed by someone. She felt that she had overlooked a problem. Her son was already so big, but she had never bought him any decent toys. It was mainly because this brat's usual behavior was too precocious, so no one would think of buying him that kind of thing, for example, rattles, dolls, and some educational toys. When she was pregnant with him, she did buy some, but it was a pity that those things were already destroyed. She thought about it for a moment. Although she could now easily use her magic to create a few dolls, she always felt that the things made with magic were not so honest. She felt guilty for her son, so she wanted to go out and get a few toys for him. She called Qiongqi and Tengxi and asked them to stay and look after the child while she went out in the night. Chapter 2171. It was the middle of the night, and it was an eventful season. Most of the shops were closed. However, the underworld was the opposite of the other realms. The later it was, the livelier it was. Ning Xuema went to the market in the underworld this time. The underworld was dark all year round, and it rained from time to time. Therefore, the abnormal weather in the 6 realms did not affect the people in the underworld. Even the strange red rain was like normal rain in the underworld. It was not destructive. Red lanterns were hung high on the streets, and the people were surging. At first glance, one would think that they had arrived at a famous ghost street in the capital. Recently, Ning Xuema's name was very ostentatious. Even her appearance was known throughout the 6 realms. She only wanted to buy a few toys for her son this time. She did not want to attract attention, so she changed her appearance and became a young man in a green robe. She could not change the snowflake-shaped cinnabar mole on her forehead, so she changed it into an ordinary round shape. In this way, she wandered around the streets twice and did not attract anyone's attention. She especially visited toy shops. Probably because the underworld was full of energy all year round, most of the things sold were colorful and colorful. The cloth dolls sold were either flirtatious or strange. They looked a little like the dolls burned for the dead in the human world. It was a little eerie. Although her son was brave, Ning Xuema did not want to buy a ghost doll to accompany him. It was better to find something that looked more sunny. She went to several famous shops in the underworld, but she did not find a suitable one. She was disappointed. Maybe the style of the underworld was like this? It seemed that she was destined to go home empty-handed tonight. She should take some time tomorrow to look at other places. She did not buy a suitable toy for her son, but she accidentally heard a piece of gossip. Recently, the underworld was relatively peaceful compared to the other 5 realms. However, there was a disturbance recently. Children often went missing in the city. It was said that the first ones to go missing were the homeless children on the streets. The underworld was poor, so there were many homeless children. The disappearance of a few homeless children did not attract attention at all. People just felt that there were fewer homeless children on the streets recently. They could not see them all the time, but no one cared. It was not until a few days ago that children from normal families began to go missing that people started to notice. The parents of the children who went missing reported it to the authorities. The authorities also sent out officers to search everywhere, but there was no news. Those children went missing completely, and not even a piece of their clothes could be found. Until now, 8 children from normal families had gone missing, not counting the homeless children. While Ning Xuema was wandering around the main street, she coincidentally bumped into a mother who was crazily looking for her child all over the street. She was calling out her child's nickname, and her voice had almost changed pitch. And Ning Xuema heard the gossip. And the parents of the day, of course, of the children of the day, and the of the day, they would come out to look for their children to eat, and of the month of the day. But recently, after the news of the children disappearing frequently spread, the adults no longer dared to let the children out to play. Even if they insisted on going out, the adults would follow them. Just now, the mother who was looking for her child was in the same situation. Her child was used to running around outside. These few days, he was so uncomfortable at home that he insisted on coming out. Chapter 2172. As a mother, she had no choice but to take him out. They just walked around the street and looked at some beautiful jewelry. When she turned around, she found that her 5-year-old son was gone. Ning Xuema frowned slightly. She was also the mother of a child. She could empathize with the pain of losing a child. She hated human traffickers the most in her life. In modern times, she usually killed one whenever she saw one. This time, she just wanted to buy some toys for her son. She didn't expect to encounter such a case. This case was a bit strange. Although human traffickers had existed since ancient times, the underworld was different from other worlds. There was no such concept as men were superior to women. There were 3 kinds of unfilial, and having no children was the worst. So, there were very few people who sold children. Even if there were human traffickers, they mostly liked to sell women. Now, there were only 2 possibilities for a city to suddenly lose so many children in such a short time. First, a group of human traffickers was rampant. They stole the children and sold them to other worlds. Second, someone wanted to use the children to practice some evil martial arts. But the first possibility was not very likely. Because the children of the underworld had a body, it was not suitable for them to marry people from other worlds. They had no children after marriage. No one from other worlds was willing to buy the children of the underworld. Even if the children of the underworld were sold, no one would buy them. So, there was only the second possibility left. Ning Xuema's heart suddenly beat wildly. Luo Jiuqin was practicing a kind of evil martial arts now, and his whereabouts had been a mystery recently. She had sent out so many spies, but no one had found him since he was hiding now. It meant that his evil martial arts had not really been completed. He was still practicing it. So, was the sudden loss of so many children in the underworld related to him? She was standing there thinking. Then, she heard a tinkling sound from afar. The sound was crisp, sweet, and as beautiful as the sound of nature. She looked in the direction of the voice and saw a child running over with a hop and a skip. Ning Xuema's eyes lit up. The child was holding a doll in his hand. This doll was different from the style of the netherworld. It was carved out of white jade and was about the size of a 3-week-old baby. It had smiling eyes and looked as festive as the Maitreya Buddha. There was a silver bell hanging from the white jade baby's arm and neck. As the baby ran, the silver bell jingled. Her son would definitely like this kind of doll. Ning Xuemo remembered her purpose for coming here. Her heart was filled with joy. She immediately stopped the child and asked him where he bought the white jade doll from. The child pointed at the end of the street. There's a newly opened jade shop there. There are many dolls in there, all kinds of them, and they're all very cheap. Ning Xuema was overjoyed and walked in the direction the child was pointing. Xiaobao, run slower. A woman ran over from the other end of the street and caught up with the child. She reprimanded him unhappily. Be careful not to be kidnapped. The child giggled. How could she let her mother hold her hand? She ran forward like a wisp of smoke. No one kidnapped me. I won't be bored if I have this doll with me. The mother and daughter gradually went away. Ning Xuemon naturally heard the movement behind her. She couldn't help but shake her head. It seemed that there were still many children who liked dolls, regardless of gender. Her son was not an exception. She finally found the shop. The shop was not big and looked very inconspicuous among the rows of shops around it. Chapter 2173. Ning Xuema walked in and discovered that the interior was filled with white jade dolls. These dolls were of different shapes and sizes, but each one was exquisitely carved and lifelike. Under the illumination of the lantern light, each one of them appeared as round as pearls and smooth as jade, making people want to hug and kiss them. Ning Xuema fell in love with these dolls as soon as she saw them. The boss sitting behind the counter was a middle-aged man with a sallow complexion. He looked listless, but when he saw a customer coming in, he cheered up a little. Ning Xuema looked around the shop. The decoration inside was quite shabby. Other than the wooden shelves that held the white jade dolls, everything else was very inconspicuous. This showed how poor the boss of the shop was. Ning Xuema picked up a jade doll and looked at it carefully. This jade was a little strange. It was not like any jade she had seen before. There was a light pink in the snow-white jade. It felt warm and moist in her hand, like the skin of a baby. It was very comfortable. These jade dolls had silver bells hanging on them, and each of them could make a different sound. When they were shaken, the silver bells would make a crisp tinkling sound, which was breathtaking. Ning Xuema asked about the price. The boss rolled his eyes and looked at Ning Xuema. He stretched out 2 fingers and said, 200 taels for one. Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. Boss, do you sell by looking at people? Just now, a child bought one here. It was only 20 copper coins. The boss lowered his eyelids again. I sell goods to people who are fated. In my shop, it is only 20 copper coins for a child and 200 taels for an adult. To think that he was really someone who sold goods by looking at people and even said it so openly. He was a very proud and artistic boss. Ning Xuema played with the doll and asked casually, these dolls are beautifully carved. 200 taels for one is not expensive. Is this your own craftsmanship? The boss looked dispirited, but he was too lazy to talk. So what if it is beautiful? Not many people in this place can recognize it. Do you want to buy it or not? If you don't want to buy it, then get out. He actually gave the order to leave. No wonder the shop was so quiet. It turned out that the boss had a weird personality. Since I've chosen them, of course I'll buy them. Ning Xuema chose 2 dolls. I'll take these 2. She placed them on the counter. Help me wrap them up. However, the boss didn't move. Each person can only buy 1. Ning Xuema. What a weird boss. Boss, I have 2 babies at home. At least 1 for each of us, right? Ning Xuema bargained with him. The boss did not give in at all. Adults can only buy 1. You can let the 2 children do it themselves, then I'll give you 1 for free. Ning Xuema. What a weird boss and weird rules. Ning Xuema had no choice but to give up 1 and ask him to pack only 1. Boss, how many dolls have you sold? Ning Xuema asked casually. The boss took the doll and took out a carving knife. He looked up at Ning Xuema and asked, How old is your child? How many months and days has he been born? Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. Boss, why are you asking this? The boss said, Isn't it more sincere to carve his birthday? Your child will like it more. This reason sounded very reasonable. Ning Xuema casually told him a date. The boss carved the date of birth on the back of the white jade doll with the carving knife. Then, he put the doll into a wooden box and wrapped it up. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.